if I could request that the South Coast Air Quality Management Board come to the dais for the 9 o'clock start time of the board meeting, I would appreciate it.
We got 2 minutes.
Hey,
We gotta get a head start.
yeah, we're trying to. Would Nancy Vasquez please come to the dais? All right, we're going to convene the September 4th, 2015 Governing Board meeting of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And we're going to ask Mr. Cacchiotti to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please stand up and face the flag and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. do we have any opening comments by any of my colleagues?
Yes.
Okay,
I just want to mention that I attended 2 conferences since our last meeting. One was called Women in Green, and I'm in green today. And it was young women, well, all ages of women actually, who are entrepreneurial, involved in green enterprises. So that was very interesting and nice to see what young people are thinking of. And I also attended a conference that UC Davis put on up in Pacific Grove at Asilomar, the Asilomar Conference Center. And actually, Dr. Lou was there and was a moderator on one of the panels. So that was really quite interesting as well. One of the things that stood out at the conference was the emphasis on shared economy. And these companies like Lyft and Uber that have a platform, a software platform that puts people together, that matches excess capacity with the need in the community or in the general society. So that was really a very interesting part of the conference. So anyway, just wanted to mention that to all of you. Thank you.
thank you. Dr. Lou?
I just wanted to report that I did attend that Asilomar conference. Do we have the slide? Did it work? I was trying to copy a slide over. There we go. And there's a picture. Hit the next button. You'll see that I'm right there. But then when I looked at it, hit it again, because then I looked at the picture a little bit more. I saw that Councilmember Mitchell's right in front of me. So just wanted to point that out. That's right. And oh, the next one shows that they have put up the summary of the highlights on their website at its.ucdavis.edu.
Dr. Parker?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to report that attended on this last Monday the California legislature and was able to have some contact with some of the legislators relative to the things that concerned us about the SB 350 legislation that is going through the legislature presently. We made our voice itself known, and hopefully to the extent itself of what we will ultimately get out of it for our region. We thought that it was very important that we make that particular appearance. Dr. Wallerstein, accompanying us, and Dr. Burke as well. So I thought that the people that we spoke to were very appreciative of the fact that we came, and we talked about what goes on in our region and why it's important to us to have certain kinds of things, and some of the things that we indicated wasn't a perfect bill, but there were a lot of things in it that the goals that were going to be set by it were important for us. So they were very grateful that we came. They wanted to hear what our concerns were and how we would go about implementing some of the things that were set forth there. So I think it was very important that from our support that the board had indicated that we make an appearance and let everyone know that why we were there.
Also, I thought that it was a very effective trip to Sacramento, but also Dr. Parker and I went to an event that was sponsored by the district, the White event, and I have to tell you that that organization provides scholarships for children, and there was a young woman who performed there. It was just absolutely amazing that the talent that these people have. So I'd like to thank Alicia for finding that organization and helping them out, and it was indeed worthwhile for the district, I think, and for children. It was just amazing. Are there any other comments by any other board members? Then we'll move on to the public hearing, the consent calendar.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from agenda item number 12.
Okay.
I serve on the subcommittee for the site selection on the Air Resources Board, and this agenda item affects that. So recusing myself from that item.
And we will be pulling items 8, 12, and 23 for public comment. Dr. Liu?
Yes, and please bear with me. I got a lot of ones with conflicts this time. I would like to pull 2A for a brief comment, too.
You'd like to pull which?
2A.
2A?
Yeah, 2, which is 2A. So I have like 6 of these, so please bear with me. So I need to recuse myself.
2A?
No, I don't have a conflict on 2A.
We'll work that out for you.
Okay, we'll work on it. I need to recuse myself from items involving contracts with those who have made charitable contributions to our employer Coalition for Clean Air. I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 3 because NRG/EVGO is a potential source of income materially affected by this item. I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 5 because Chevron, Sempra, and General Motors are potential sources of income which are materially affected by this item. I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 7 because Southern California Gas Company and Southern California Edison are potential sources of income which are materially affected by this item. I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 8 because Metro is a potential source of income and is materially affected by this item. I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 12 because Riverside Public Utilities, City of Riverside, is a potential source of income which is materially affected by this item. I am recusing myself from agenda item number 16 because LADWP and the Better World Group are potential sources of income which are materially affected by this item. Thank you.
Couldn't he do the inverse?
Beg your pardon?
Couldn't he do the inverse and say, here's what I'm not recusing?
I think I have to actually say which one.
Why don't you go home, Dr. Liu? Right. What are you doing here?
I'm interested in stuff on later in the agenda. Only reason I'm here.
Supervisor Benoit?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For item number 12, I do not have a financial interest, but I am required for the record to identify that I am a supervisor for the County of Riverside, which is involved in the item.
Councilmember Caccioti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For item number 16, I don't also have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record I'm a council member, City of South Pasadena, which is involved in item 16. I'd like to pull item number 3.
All right. Got it. Okay, well, then why don't we take,
Dr. Burke, if you give the council a second, maybe.
Not a conflict, but I'm a board member of the Orange County Transportation Authority, and apparently we're going to give some money to OCTA on item 16. But I would move the balance, Mr. Chair.
okay. Do we have
One more conflict.
we have one more conflict before we go? Supervisor Antonovich? It didn't go on, Mike.
Item number 8, I have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record that I'm a member of the Board of Directors for the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, which is involved in this item.
Okay, then we will take the balance of the consent calendar minus 2A, 3, 8, 12, and 23. We have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, those items are approved. Item 2A.
On this one is proposed amended rule 1106, has to do with marine coatings and the interests that have been expressed by the UVEB, ultraviolet electron beam industry. I was interested in those issues. I think staff has told me that they're going to address most of them, but one of them that they said that they weren't going to do was to add a definition to the rule and put in a specific test method, because they don't know of anyone who's actually doing this right now. I would think that we would want to provide the rule language in there to encourage the industry to get into here, this area, because there are such low emissions associated with it. And I just asked staff if they'd have a response to that.
Again, we have those comments, and we've been looking at the current market out there to see whether there's any products out there. And again, we're not finding them now, but we are considering adding the method and the definition in case those products do materialize in the market in the future.
Yeah, I think we want to incentivize them to get in, because their emissions are very negligible compared to what the other coatings are. Thank you.
I have a motion on 2A.
Move approval.
Any opposition? Hearing none, 2A is approved. Item number 3.
Mr. Chair, just some clarification and explanation by Matt. I think this is an exciting proposal by staff. I support 100%. Just want to bring it to everybody's attention on the board and also in the audience what we're doing. This is immense. It's transformative. We've got about 20 electric chargers, and Matt can tell us what we're about to approve tonight, this morning.
Thank you, council members. So the item before the board is to expand or greatly expand our level 2 charging infrastructure here at the district. So we currently, as you mentioned, have about 28 level 2 chargers. Staff and the public are often fighting for spaces and switching out cars, and we know that the board also has some spaces reserved that are often taken by public members. But the intent is to expand to just over 100 level 2 chargers. These chargers will have the ability to throttle up or down depending on demand response. We'll have that capability. And so we're going to be greatly expanding the incentive for driving an electric vehicle here to the district.
And I think this is important because I've read the contract, and I know the city of South Pasadena we had on our agenda for Wednesday night. We actually disapproved. We had to reject a number of bids for an electric charging station. The reason was our engineering estimate was about $20,000 for a charging station to hook up to our local parking lot for the residents, for public. But the bids came in, the lowest was from $39,000 to $60,000. And for a lot of the little cities I represent in the San Gabriel Valley, it's difficult. And I see Ben over there, and also Council Member Mayor Pro Tem. And when you look at what it is, I'm going to pull up one of the pages from the staff report. And you don't really realize, I've had a lot of other cities say, Mike, we'd like to do this, but we just don't have the money for the infrastructure, et cetera. And I believe it's on page 7. I just wanted to find that language where it just shows you what they've got to install. Okay, here it is. Now this is, you figure, oh, it's easy to just install an electric charging station, put the station itself in a little conduit. But indicates here, preparation, this is in our staff report, page 8 of 44. But it indicates the contractor has to do all the above, including but not limited to trenching, boring, conduit runs, concrete cutting, asphalt removal, removal of existing charging station if it's there, relocation, installation of conduit electric wire, upgrade of electric charging infrastructure, panel additions, transformers, et cetera. So you think you're putting an electric charge, you realize, and I saw in yours $300,000, it's a massive undertaking. So I bring that to our attention. And another comment is, I know we have item 6, I want to refer to, and that's with subsidizing residential. Matt, I had a call today from people, this week from, it's called the Alhambra in the city of Alhambra, a large multi-use urban park with 4 colleges there, gyms, everything. Tens of thousands of people every week use it, right across from the county's public works on Fremont and Mission in the city of Alhambra. They said, we want to start installing electric charging. Is there any money available for businesses, companies, things like that? Just as we already approved residential subsidies on just earlier in the consent calendar. What's the future for business? Or can we help them technically? What can I tell these businesses that come to the board members? How can we help you?
So it's a great question, Councilman. Before the California Public Utilities Commission right now are proposals by all the major IOUs to get into the business of doing workplace charging or more public charging. So Edison has a program called Charge Ready. Well, they will do installations at work sites or what they call long dwell times, where they would give an incentive to the business owner to install, and they would give them a rebate, but Edison would own the upstream assets, and then the business or the property owner would own the charger itself, but they'll have a pretty great deal for installation. And so that's going to occur, and that's why we think they're going to take up that space in terms of workplace and MUDs, and where we can fill the role is in things like DC fast charging and residential, and that's why we're selecting those two types of charging infrastructure, because we think the utilities will be filling in.
And Matt, what's the project timeline for the utilities, just so if I can get back to them? Is it a year or 6 months, or is any thoughts?
I believe it's before the PUC now.
Okay.
And so the decision is forthcoming, and we can certainly get that information and pass that on to you.
Thanks.
Something,
Okay.
please. Matt, all these charging stations that we're putting in, have you notified Edison? Because knowing Edison, if we all 100 plugged in, you're going to blow every transformer from here to Chino, based on their idea of maintenance. Huh?
Beyond Chino.
Or beyond Chino, probably.
So-
All the way to Santa Ana.
So, yes, Mayor,
What are they going to do about that?
part of the program was to do an engineering study to ensure that we have sufficient electrical supply, and so we've done that analysis, and that's included in this item. So this item is really twofold. One is for the board to approve us purchase of the hardware from BTC Power, and then release an RFP for the installation, and we'll get bids on how much it'll cost to actually install it based on our engineering analysis.
With their transformers, are they capable of handling that kind of a load?
So our engineering analysis has indicated that we would probably have to do some transformer upgrades, and that'll be included in the cost.
Probably all of them, knowing Edison.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one last, following up on Dennis, because this happened we've had a number of Edison issues in the city over the last couple of weeks, like Long Beach did. But this is the first time it's happened to me since I've been charging at my house, since I've been on the board and had the BMW Mini years ago. The last week, I usually just plug in at night, get the electric, morning is all charged. The last week, and this is what a lot of residents have been having problems, so it's going your issue, Dennis, I would plug in and it would just cut off. So I go plug in, go turn off the panel, go, restart, and it took me 15 minutes every night going back and forth, and a car would go on, check the electric infrastructure, and then finally one night it said, check the grid. The car came on and said, check, your grid's not strong, it says the grid's insufficient or something. So I literally could not charge, and I had to go out, and every night, the last 5 or 6 nights, I'm frustrated to the point where I'm going to have this, and staff brought this up at a meeting, was talking about Edison, and I didn't make the connection until all of a sudden it said, there's a problem with the grid on my charger. And it literally, 15 to 20 minutes, I finally get it to go to the panel, turn it off, turn it back on, restart, plug in. So this may be happening in the future, Dennis. It's the first time it's ever happened in the 6 years I've been charging.
You plug in 100 cars here, it's going to blow up everything from here to Chino.
That's amazing. Okay, would you like to make a motion?
Move
to that
approval,
item?
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
You needs a
Supervisor?
comment.
Yeah, and I can't second it and then speak under the rules here, right? So I won't second it.
I'll second it. Go
Thank
ahead
you.
and speak.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the move. It's important that we try to keep up. This is such a new area for all of us. It's going to become very common in the future, but we're basically providing a gas station at work for the employees today. And more of them are taking advantage of it. So we end up with a situation that we have going to get to close to 100 spots now. In 5 years, are we going to have the whole parking lot full? There's another area that needs to be dealt with, and I think we can kind of take a leadership role here too, and I mentioned it during the Technology Commission. I don't know, Barry, if you've had a chance to review it or talk about it, but I suggested we need to work with our employees through their labor representatives to come up with a policy on how we use these spots.
You're absolutely right.
And at current time, we're not charging anybody, and that's maybe policy we want to continue to do for a while or maybe indefinitely. But when you end up, somebody parks there and they're charged in 2 hours, but the car sits there all day, would the employees want to make a rule that they got to move it out of there? Because we can't afford at $30,000 to $60,000 to electrify the whole parking lot, every single spot. So I think it's another area where we can lead by coming up with a rational sharing policy, but we need to get started on that.
You know, it's amazing you said that because I was noticing at the LAX, they used to let electric cars charge and park free. That no longer happens.
Yeah, it's an evolving world.
Yeah.
So, you know,
No
you're
longer in
right. This
diapers.
is definitely something that we need to look at because it's going to be a problem for everybody eventually.
Yeah, and we can learn we can try and lead in learning how to make it work for everybody.
All right. I'm charging mine for free this morning.
I saw that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Hearing none. Item 8. We have testimony on 8. Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council and participant in meetings in the Atwater Village area where locomotives are at the central facility for Metrolink. More Tier 4 trains should be purchased and or required of the transportation agencies that are involved. It's a major issue in the Atwater Village Echo Park area. So I'll fully support any trains that you can get that are Tier 4 and highly recommend maybe you should get a rule or a policy for encouraging all replacements to go Tier 4. I know the expense. Thank you.
Do we have a motion on this item?
Move approval is a great item, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I have to make a statement into the record.
Okay. Recognizing Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you very much for the record. I am not required to recuse myself. However, I do need to disclose that I am on the board of the directors of the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, which is one of the contractors for this item and the major beneficiary. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank Supervisor Nelson for helping us move this item along. I think it's one of the best items that we've approved in this category for a long time, and it was because of his efforts it came to our attention. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, that item is approved. Item number 12. We have testimony by Nicole Davis.
Hi. Well, I came up here just to answer questions, but if you want me to give an overview of what this item is, I can. I don't know.
I don't think we need that, but if we have questions, thank you for offering that. Supervisor Benoit, would you like to speak on this item?
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Nicole represents CSERT. Many of you have heard me over the years ask the question about CSERT and whether or not we are working with them. They're a terrific organization that actually University of California, Riverside began in 1954 with a research university effort on smog. And they've been a great leader in that area for years. CSERT's a brand new development, now only 20 years old. The combination of their history makes this opportunity to work closer with that organization very, very, very worthwhile. And I appreciate working with Barry and the staff to put this together. If, in fact, we get CARB involved at that location, it's going to be hugely beneficial for CARB, for us, for the university, and for air quality. So I'm very much supportive of this. I appreciate the staff's work in getting it here, and I move approval.
May we have a motion on the item?
Move the item.
You just did.
I moved it.
And just a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
Or a question for, you know, and I read this. If you can tell us, on my first bus trip, I went by the current El Monte Carb office off of Rosemead Boulevard, very small in that little industrial park. If you can just overview what's going to happen with the $1 million we're giving to Carb, UC Riverside, and I know it looks like a benefit for South Coast too, long-term.
So for this agenda item that we're discussing today,
Right.
basically, UCR and AQMD would be funding a training program, and it would benefit employees of AQMD and ARB. And basically, the program would develop courses specifically designed to meet the needs of the agencies and provide an opportunity for better understanding and knowledge on the research that we do at CSER and UCR. So we do about $500,000 of research at CSER annually for AQMD and about $6 million annually for other agencies. And we also have over a dozen other faculty at UCR from the School of Medicine, the School of Public Policy, and the College of Natural Agricultural Sciences. So this provides a great opportunity to provide an educational platform for both the AQMD and ARB staff members.
In addition, if I could add, Councilman, what we're doing here, and it's described in the attachment to the board letter, is we're also creating an ability for the campus to match what we're doing. So there'll be extra faculty added in the areas that we're interested in. We're going to have an opportunity to sit down with them and work on their future research plans. As Nicole is mentioning, there'll be opportunities for us to take our staff and have them better educated so that when we're working on mobile source policies here at the agency, the staff will be more informed, better trained. I also anticipate that with these additional courses happening at their campus, that's going to help us with a pool of future hires here at the agency. So there's a broad number of facets that provide benefit to us, considering the board's desire to see much more done on mobile source controls.
Are they considering moving the entire operation of
Yes, they are.
Carb over?
Yes.
Great idea. Thanks.
And let me just add one more thought. I was touring the site 2 weeks ago and excited to see that the first addition to Metrolink in many, many years is the Paris Valley line. And the Paris Valley line leaves Riverside and ends up in the city of Paris. The first stop leaving the city of Riverside is maybe 300 yards from the potential location for CARB. So a lot of CARB employees could ride the train and do it in a Class 4 locomotive. There's a lot of great synergies here.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Hearing none, that item is approved. Item 23, testimony by Dr. Tom Williams.
Talk to her.
Good morning. Dr. Tom Williams, Sierra Club Transportation Committee, also recent commenter on the SR 710 North study. We fully agree with what AQMD came up with as far as their comments regarding the SR 710 report. I don't like to dignify it by calling it a draft environmental impact report because somewhat like AQMD's responders or commenters, you have a lot of things going on. Just in the month of June, you had 200 documents or thereabouts submitted to AQMD for comments, and we greatly appreciate the comments that AQMD staff gave regarding the SR 710 North study. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have a motion on this item?
Move approval?
Second? Okay, we have a second. Any opposition? Hearing none, that item is approved. The next items will be 17 through 35.
Second.
Is there any opposition to 17 through 35? Hearing none, they are approved. Item 36.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mohsen Nazemi. There is no presentation, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. This is a routine report that we give to the board each year.
Do we have any questions on 36? May I have a motion on 36?
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Second? Second? Okay, any opposition on 36? Hearing none, it is approved. We'll move to item 37.
There's no presentation since they're doing a presentation. The public, they're opening the public.
I'm sorry?
There's no presentation since it was continued. I think we're just opening the hearing.
So Dr. Burke, as the board will recall, at last month's meeting, the staff made a presentation on this rule. The board took testimony, and then today is reserved for any other additional public testimony, and then the item would be before the board, and the staff's available at the appropriate time to answer questions regarding the proposal that's in the rule package. I do want to note for the record that we did provide a DVD to the board members who were not present last month so that they could review the meeting and be able to vote on this item when it gets to that point today.
Okay, we have obviously testimony on this item.
Dr. Parker?
Oh, Dr. Parker? I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members, and to those in the public audience today, the proposed rule 1148.1 that is coming before you is set forth in very specific language concerning the distance of controlled equipment that is located in an area that we call sensitive receptor daily readings. The number of feet that is set forth in the proposed rule that is before you right now is 1,500. I'm making a motion, and we have talked to those industries that would be mostly affected about this. We're going to change that back to exactly where it was before, 328 feet, 100 meters. I believe that the affected industries will be probably testifying that they agree with this. Also, we're going to be adding an item D. And it says, any stuffing box or produced gas handling control equipment located between 328 feet, 100 meters, and 1,500 feet from a sensitive receptor daily for any facility receiving notices of violation for Rule 402 NR HNS Code number, Health and Safety Code, that is, Section 41700 for odor nuisance occurring on 2 or more days. Receptor distance shall be determined as the distance measured from the stuffing box for produced gas handling and control equipment to the property line of the nearest sensitive receptor. Further, we're going to be on the bottom of page 10 of the rule, within paragraph G1, we're going to be stating receptive notices, taking out the word A, of violation rule 402 and our Health and Safety Code, section 41700, for odor nuisance occurring on 2 or more days. I believe that this will hopefully answer many of the opposition that we've had from industry, and I propose that as you can see, it's been posted on our screen. As the speakers will come forth, they will take that in consideration, that I'm making this motion, that rule will be amended to include this particular language.
I'll
Thank
second
you.
the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we don't vote on this until we vote on the whole
Right.
motion, right?
Our desire here was that if Dr. Parker knew he was going to make a motion in this regard, that he do it early before people have testified so that they'll have an opportunity to comment on this and the board can take that into consideration. We've also passed out copies of Dr. Parker's motion to the audience.
Okay, we have a number of people to testify.
Mr. Chairman, I think you have 2 board members that,
I'm sorry?
I think there was 2 board members that wanted to speak now.
We can take public testimony.
You want to do it later?
What did he say?
We can take,
Okay.
I'm okay with taking public testimony.
Buscaino? Yes.
I just had a question on the rule before us, and I strongly support Dr. Parker's amendments, and thank the staff for looking at these changes that ultimately will create a larger sensitive receptor radius, new odor protocols, and potential fines with enforceability. Question, if you can, Dr. Wallerstein, is reading over the letter sent by industry leaders. Can you explain why we need all oil facilities to report on one incident from one location in response to the letter that was submitted by the industry?
Actually, I think when you get to the testimony, you're going to hear that the industry is good with amendments that Dr. Parker is making and that
Very good.
addresses their primary concerns.
Again, another effort from AQMD to come to some people come to the table to find some compromises. So I really want to acknowledge and congratulate and thank you, Dr. Wallerstein, and your team and leadership of Dr. Parker for coming to the table and trying to make everyone happy on this proposed rule. Thank you.
Poor penmanship, is this Shams Hagan? Hacan? From EMB Natural Resources? Not here? You are here? Would you come to the vacant microphone? Pat Gorski, come to the other vacant microphone. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Burke and board members. I'd like to thank the staff and the board with working with the industry on the new proposed changes.
Sir, state your name for the record, please.
Shams Hassan with E&B Natural Resources. Again, I would like to thank the staff, Chairman Burke, the board, and Dr. Barry Wallerstein for working with us on making the proposed changes, and we will go along with the changes. Thank you.
Would Jack Edit come to the vacant microphone?
Hello, I'm Pat Gorski with Freeport McMoran Oil and Gas. And I would also like to thank staff for all the hard work they put into this rulemaking and all the work with the communication and everything. And I appreciate everything that's been done, and based on Dr. Parker's amendments, we fully support it.
Thank you very much. Would Dr. Stewart and Angelica Gonzalez come to the vacant microphones?
Jim Stewart, representing the Sierra Club. As you know, the Sierra Club and all of its many thousands of members and supporters have been in support of this proposed staff recommendation up until we just got this terrible motion from Dr. Parker. The original rule that was being proposed by the staff did provide the kind of protection that the public needs. I mean, we're all well aware of that terrible odors and illnesses that were caused by that emissions from the facility near USC. And we were really looking forward to this kind of rule that would have, really provided the kind of protection from the odors and the basically hazardous emissions. So we're definitely very, very opposed to this new rule. And I want to also remind the board of what was shown in July. There was this horrifying picture from Stand LA. On one side of the wall, beside one of these facilities, was a guy unloading some hazardous chemicals to be used in this well. And he had a full hazmat suit on, the full gas mask all the way down to the boots. Because what these facilities are getting is horribly dangerous chemicals. And they're coming in all the time. And what's on the other side of that wall? A yard where kids are playing. Old people are sitting on their porches, and there's no hazmat suit for them. I mean, there's just no protection. We were really looking forward to this kind of 1,500-foot rule because we need you guys on the board to protect our health. So let's hope that you can reject Dr. Parker's motion and move ahead with a real protective rule. Thank you very much.
Dr. Burke, could I respond or clarify?
Sure.
Okay. The reference to 1,500 feet is several places in the rule. There was one place in particular where weekly inspections would drop to daily inspections, and there was no other trigger other than the 1,500 feet. The industry has agreed to accept the 1,500 feet with a trigger of 2 violation notices. So the industry has really come a very long way in this particular regard, and the rule
You can
is
stop
very
now.
protective.
Dr. Stewart has had an epiphany.
Oh, thank you.
See that? Education. It's a marvelous thing.
That's what I wanted the clarification on. Okay.
No problem, Dr. Stewart. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Board. My name is Angelica Gonzalez. I am the Conservation Manager for the Sierra Club. And I'd just like Dr. Stewart, we're here to support the proposed rule, but kind of disappointed with the new motion. So I do urge the Board to consider the public's health in regards to these oil drilling
Can you state your disappointment?
No, I got the clarification right now that was made. I just really hope that we consider the public in regards to a lot of the chemicals that are being used in this operation.
I'm confused.
So I do support the original
Right.
rule, and that's
Right.
what I'm here to state.
But why would you oppose this one?
No, I was also confused as well as to
okay.
the 1,500,
Yeah,
so
okay.
let me clarify that.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sandra Burkhart, would you come to the vacant microphone? No, I don't think so. And Candace Salway, come to the other microphone. See, he was disappointed. He thought you were the actress.
You were the actress.
You see.
No, fortunately not.
That,
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Burke, members of the Governing Board. My name is Sandra Burkhart, and I represent the Western States Petroleum Association. As you're well aware, we have submitted multiple comment letters on this rulemaking and have had some concerns. We actually are amenable to the new rule as proposed this morning and feel that it still accomplishes the goals of the district, but also allows us a little bit less burden on this. So really appreciate staff's consideration of this. And again, we are amenable to these changes this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will Michael Solomon come to the vacant microphone?
Good morning, Board. My name is Candace Salway. I'm with Freeport McMoran Oil and Gas. We support the rule as amended by Dr. Parker's recommendations, and we greatly appreciate all the work of staff and the board through this rulemaking process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would Blair Knox please come to the vacant microphone? Your name for the record, sir.
My name is Michael Salmon. I'm an associate professor of history at UCLA and a resident of the West Adams section of Los Angeles. I am in favor of this proposed rule change, and I'm here today to ask that in subsequent action that it please be extended to address the issue of well site flaring. There's a need to address the lack of regulation of oil well site flaring. Well site flaring has been increasing in the LA basin due to the recent past drilling boom, low natural gas prices, and changes to gas specifications, especially SoCalGas's revised Rule 30 that eliminates historical exemptions for local producers with contracts with SoCalGas. And this is substantially reducing the amount of locally produced gas that can be put into utility pipelines. I live in between the Murphy drill site and the 4th Avenue drill site in the West Adams section of Los Angeles. At the Murphy drill site in Los Angeles, the operator is seeking approval now from the Department of City Planning to install a CEB 800 gas burning flare, the first time a flare has ever been installed at the Murphy drill site. And they're applying for it in order to begin burning on site roughly 1/2 of the 1 million cubic feet of gas per day that's produced at the Murphy and Jefferson sites. Just to give you a sense of scale, that is more than twice as much gas as was burned on the average day at the Phillips refinery in Carson in 2014. In 2014, the average at Carson was about 164,000 cubic feet per day. And the applicant has said that it will use the CEB 800 to burn 400,000 cubic feet per day at the Murphy site, less than 100 feet away from sensitive receptors in a densely residential neighborhood. So I'd like to ask you to please consider doing 3 things. One is to please consider directing staff to develop an amendment to come back to the board in the future to address flaring at well sites, to at least prohibit routine flaring, as is done at refineries, and ideally to prohibit all flaring, because well sites are quite different from refineries. There's no necessity for flaring. Virtually all of the well sites in the city of Los Angeles since 1960 have not had flares. Second, I'd like to request that you please explore with staff the possibility of supporting a demonstration project using fuel cells as an ultra-low emission way to handle gas that can't be sold to the gas company. And third, I would request that you please ask staff to review once again the AQMD permit for the CEB 800 at the Murphy site, because the applicant misrepresented the project both to AQMD and to the planning department, and the project has never been subjected to any review under CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you. Baharim.
Mr. Chairman, could I, over here, can I get staff to respond to that? This Murphy facility, I'm familiar with it because it's located adjacent to the Carson Gore Elementary School, ironically named after Rachel Carson and Al Gore for their environmental efforts. And it's been shut down ever since the school opened. It was bad siding on LAUSD's part, but that notwithstanding, I mean, certainly operating one of these facilities next to an elementary school may cause some alarm.
That facility is on West Adams, a little bit west of Western. There is a school that's about 1.5 blocks away from that facility. It's not on the fence line of that facility, the Murphy Field.
I thought
so
it was.
I think we may be talking about 2 different items, but in terms of the gentleman's testimony, I do intend to have the staff look at the possibility of fuel cells. The issue will be the quality of the gas and what you'd have to do to clean it up.
Right.
But I also wanted the audience and the board to know that the State Air Board is working on a methane regulation that would potentially affect the burning of methane from oil production fields. So this topic will come back to the board in some form or another due to federal or
the
state
question
action.
of flares hasn't really come up in the conversation of this regulation before, right?
This is just a recent thing.
Okay, thank you.
That folks have been raising.
Bahram Frazili? CBE? No? Okay, and Teresa Flores, who just put in a card? Can you come to the vacant microphone? Your name for the record, sir.
Yes, Dr. Burke, board members, my name is Blair Knox. I'm the Director of Regional Affairs for the California Independent Petroleum Association. SIPA, as we're commonly known, is a nonprofit trade organization representing well over 500 oil and gas operators, service supply companies, drillers, the gamut of the oil and gas industry, including the majority of producers in the LA Basin. We very much appreciate the amendments put across today by Dr. Parker. Very much appreciate those, and with that, we are going to remove our opposition. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Bahram Fazali. I'm Policy Director for Communities for a Better Environment, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. As you know, we have worked over the past 2 decades to closely with AQMD to formulate its environmental justice policies and pursuing enhancement measures, some of those championed by you, Chairman Burke. Now, unfortunately, we don't always see environmental justice policies find their way into the daily protocols and routines of AQMD operations in permitting, enforcement, or rulemaking. This, we thought, until we saw the amendment this morning, was one of those processes where AQMD was actually going out of its way to engage the community and work with us, and we actually are very happy with some of the things in the proposal. And we did meet with Dr. Wallerstein and his staff. We have participated in a number of different workshops, and a lot of good things are in this rule and also in 1148.2. But a lot of things we asked for, which are offering protection to the community, are not in the rule. And we are very disappointed to see that the rule is now being even further weakened. There is a tremendous burden of proof that is put on the shoulder of the community here. The number of the complaints that have to be registered and the triggers for doing a root cause analysis is really far too high. And it seems like now AQMD is even weakening the rule to offer more protection to the oil industry than the community. You heard very compelling testimonies last time. I hope you remember those. We are here because of, frankly, the way AQMD and a lot of other agencies, including the City of LA, has not done a good job in protecting the health of the communities, especially those that are within 1,500 feet of these very dangerous operations. And to offer an amendment to further weaken a rule that is already not going far enough in addressing the health needs of the community is a violation of your environmental justice principle and a violation of an environmental justice enhancement measure. So you cannot just give awards on environmental justice. You need to walk the walk. And this is an example where you need to really stay true to your commitments and follow through. We expect more from AQMD, and we reject the amendment of reducing the distance from 1,500 feet. Thank you.
Is a Jack Edit here in the audience from Tar Sands Action?
Mr. Chairman,
that concludes our public testimony.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a matter of clarification. It appears like we have Spanish language translation services. Did we announce that? Can we have someone announce that in Spanish?
Buenos días. Para esos que necesiten escuchar la presentación en español, a la entrada están distribuyendo aparatos. Gracias. And as people walk in, there's a sign out there that there's units available, and
Oh,
we're
okay.
watching out
I don't come
for
in
it.
that way.
No, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
We're watching out for it. Thank you.
Voting on this item? The pleasure of the board?
There's a motion and a second already.
That's on the amendment.
You know,
We need-
if I could comment, have we had a motion?
Only on the amendment.
Okay, I would move approval of the staff recommendation, subject to the amendments that were proposed by Dr. Parker, and say that, thank you. I was of the same mind that we are making a huge step towards improving public safety with this new rule, but I also am sensitive to the concerns that were expressed, and I think that you've addressed them extremely well. Thank you very much for the efforts in that regard.
We have a motion.
We have a motion there, and I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further comment on this roll?
You have a few people up.
I'd like to. We had comments here by Michael Salmon from UCLA about the flaring at these facilities, and I'd just like to have staff respond on his request to eliminate flaring or to have a demonstration project with fuel cell with the flaring. Could you please comment on that?
Be happy to. So when they're doing the oil production, you get natural gas, methane with the oil production. And so the three common methods that are used today to deal with the gas is, number one, if you can work out a deal with the utility such as Southern California Gas, you can put in equipment to clean up the gas and then bring it to pipeline quality and put it in the pipeline. That's not always possible to come up with an agreement with the Southern California Gas Company. Second, as part of our very large microturbine program, a number of the facilities have gone ahead and put in microturbines so that they can utilize the gas in the microturbines to generate electricity that can be used on-site or sold to the grid. And the third technique is to use flares. And the flare technology has improved in recent years. To my knowledge, I don't know that anyone in an oil field is using a fuel cell, but it's something that I've asked Matt to take a look at. But you have to, again, come up to the fuel quality required of a fuel cell, which is quite high. And as I was mentioning earlier, the California Air Resources Board staff is looking at a methane-related rule that would affect these types of facilities. That rule will come to the CARB board sometime next year. And so it's dealing with how much gets flared, and if you flare it, how do you flare it to help reduce the methane emissions that are global warming gas in and of themselves. So I fully expect this general topic to be one that not only the State Air Board will address, but we will have to look at because of community concerns that will be expressed during permitting processes.
So that was my next question. Will the staff please review this and come back maybe to Stationary Source with a report on your findings on that?
There's already in the package a report back to the Stationary Source Committee on implementation of the rule and some of the other issues that came up during the rulemaking process that haven't been addressed in this package. We'd be happy to look at these issues as well.
Thank you.
Supervisor Nelson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do support the motion and the amendment. I just have an ask that if it would be within your prerogative, if you might direct staff to come back to the Stationary Source Committee and have a dialogue with the board about the idea of getting into odor nuisance issues just globally. I know this agency to be exceptional when it comes to objective science and measurements that no one disputes. When we start getting into odors, and I've seen it come up in a few other items that are not necessarily on today's agenda, but I think the board needs to give some policy direction to our staff before they start making rules and regulations that deal with things that could fall in the category of subjective. We know that there are certain industries that have their opponents, and if we start measuring performance of someone by the number of phone calls by offended noses, we're just encouraging people to start making phone calls, and I don't know if that means anything other than we just created a new tactic to go after people. But be that as it may, I'd like a dialogue with staff. It'd be helpful for the staff to help us understand where in its entirety in our menu of rules that odors are measured and what we do about them. And I would strongly encourage some dialogue that the staff listen to the board's response as to what, if anything, we should do on those things in the future.
Your request has been echoed by a number of our colleagues here on the board, so I think that dialogue would be appropriate. And I know we have a short timer here on stationary shorts, but we can pass him this ball one more time before he gets out of Dodge.
Well, I kind of object to that because to me, odor travels through the air, so it ought to be mobile source. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And
we have Dr. Liu is next.
I'm all in favor of trying to make things as objective as possible, and a dialogue on odor issues is not a bad way to start, I think. But as someone who lives downwind of a refinery, I can tell you that it's not my imagination when there are problems. Surprisingly, when I got appointed to this board, the odor issues weren't as frequent since then, which is nice. But there's still times in which some things go wrong, and you can certainly smell an odor. It's not subjective, and it is a problem, and it needs to be dealt with. The particular refinery that I live downwind of is actually very responsive when you call them and let them know that there's an issue. They try to figure it out. But I'd like to talk to the amendment and also to the issue of what happens after this, because these are good changes that we're making to this rule, but we did commit to coming back with mitigation measures, and I know that staff intends to do that, but I want to reinforce that. I think it would have been helpful if the proposed amendments would have included just what immediately precedes it, because I looked it up in the rule language, and it's subsection E, operator inspection requirements, and Dr. Wallerstein mentioned this. This amendment has only to do with the operator of an oil and gas production facility shall visually inspect, and it's whether those inspections are required to happen daily and under what circumstances. So this amendment is far less disconcerting than I thought it would.
Right. That's who I called her name. Come on down. It's okay. I'm sorry?
Did you call Maria Ramos?
Okay. We don't have a card for her.
We don't have a card for her.
We submitted a card on her name.
Dr. Burke, the one thing we have to just make sure of is that if someone testified on this item last month, that they not testify again this time, because we want to treat everybody equivalently.
María, vengan, si están cerca, sí, vengan, si ustedes dos.
Ms. Flores.
Do you have a process by which you know that?
The clerk told me that the current witness's first name is different than the first name of Flores that testified
I know I haven't
last
heard from
month.
this lady, but please.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Mi nombre es María Ramos.
My name is María Ramos.
Yo creo que ya soy conocida aquí porque seguido estoy aquí dando mis quejas. Pero
I
bueno,
think I am well known here because I've been here very often presenting my complaints.
discúlpenme, pero tenemos que decir lo que realmente nos está perjudicando a nosotros y a nuestros niños sobre todo.
I apologize, but we really have to bring up what is hurting us and our children, especially.
Pero bueno, yo quiero que pongan sistema para reducir el nivel de los olores.
I want you to install systems that will reduce the odors
Que vienen de los pozos que están cerca de nuestros hogares.
that come from the sources that are close to our homes.
Y que pongan resolución de la distancia que vivimos muy cerca de los pozos, y ustedes, en vez de reducir la distancia de los pozos a nuestros hogares,
And I would like for you to resolve this situation for us who live so close to these sources. They are still too close to our homes.
la han reducido ustedes desde venir a... La han reducido ustedes. Deben de venir a Wilmington y experimentar cómo se siente vivir cerca de los pozos.
You must come to Wilmington to see for yourselves what it is like to live close to these sources.
Aunque no lo crean, sufrimos de náuseas, de dolor de cabeza, de migrañas, hasta de mal humor en algunas ocasiones cuando están trabajando en los pozos.
Even if you can't believe this, we suffer from nausea, from headaches, and even it puts us in a bad mood, believe it or not, when they are working in these sources and we are close to them.
Nos da tristeza ver a nuestros niños que se levantan o en el día andan jugando y de repente dicen, oh, me duele mucho mi cabeza.
It makes us very sad when we see our children that get up in the morning and go out there to play and then come back and tell us, oh, I have a headache.
O nosotros los adultos con fuertes dolores de cabeza. Desgraciadamente es difícil vivir con tanta contaminación, pero esperamos que ustedes hagan algo por toda la población de Wilmington, que realmente necesitamos de la bondad de todos ustedes que están sentados en esa silla. Esperamos su ayuda. Que Dios los bendiga.
And we would like to tell you that we as adults suffer of very strong headaches and migraines. So we appeal to all of you who are sitting in those seats this morning to come to Wilmington and help us out. We really need your help. May God bless you all.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
I see the lawyer headed to me, so I've done something wrong.
Hold on to your-
So people who testified last month cannot testify again this month on this issue. If you want to testify on Dr. Parker's amendment, then you can testify. So if you have a card in, or you should put a card in.
What is she speaking to?
Mi nombre es María Teresa
And
Flores.
what are you speaking on, Maria?
Sobre el 1148.1.
I'm speaking on 1148.1.
No, you can only speak on the amendment.
Dr. Burke, the clerk is checking the list of speakers from last month.
Thank you.
So speak into the microphone, Sandra.
Yes, she did not speak last time. So she can speak.
She didn't speak last month.
Oh, feel free.
Ok. Yo vengo de la ciudad de Wilmington y quisiera ceder para que me interpretara la señorita Alicia, por favor. O ella puede hablar en lugar de mí. ¿Cuál es su nombre? María Teresa Flores.
My name is Maria Teresa Flores, and I'm coming from the city of Wilmington, but I would like to allow Miss Alicia Rivera to speak on my behalf.
I think she can't do that. Yeah, lawyers tell me you can't do that.
Alicia Rivera did speak at the last
Oh,
meeting.
she is an excellent speaker. She is, and I enjoy listening to her, but I can't according to the lawyers, because she spoke last month.
That's okay. Okay, está bien.
All right, that's fine.
Thank you.
Como les
I'm sorry.
decía. You did not speak the last time.
She can speak, there's no problem with that, and you can speak.
Ok, usted puede hablar. Usted, okay. Disculpen, hubo ¿cómo se dice? Una interrupción por causa de que no nos pusimos de acuerdo quién me iba a interpretar.
I'm sorry, there was an interruption here because we hadn't agreed as to who was going to interpret for me.
Okay. Yo quería decirles que vengo de la ciudad de Wilmington.
I would like to tell you that I'm coming from the city of Wilmington.
Para decirle lo mismo que dijo la señora anteriormente.
To tell you the same thing that the lady before me told you.
Que pedimos que nos reduzcan el olor que reduzcan el sistema del olor de los pozos que están cerca de nuestros hogares.
We are asking for a reduction in the odor that comes from the wells that are close to our homes.
Si pudieran lo más pronto posible.
If you could do this as soon as possible.
Es todo lo que yo quería decirles y muchísimas gracias. Espero que me tomen en cuenta. Gracias.
That is all I have to say. Thank you so very much, and I hope you take what I said into account. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Rivera, and I am here with Communities for a Better Environment. The ladies that have come this morning with me, it's not easy to come from Wilmington and testify.
Excuse me, are you going to testify on the amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
The amendment.
But you didn't put in a card, right?
Yes, I just turned in a card.
Okay. Do I have the card? What is your name again, please?
Alicia Rivera.
Oh, yeah, sure. Here's your card.
Okay. We have been working with you on this issue of the distance for a long time, and we did not expect that we were going to find that rather than adopting the very modest, provisions of the distance, that you have reduced it to, more than half. That is not fair. That we were not notified that you were going to make that change. You have listened to the people that are doing the harm in the community, that are putting the terrible smells that make people sick and the children nauseated and can't eat the whole day. We did not expect that you would stab us on the back with this amendment. And we hope that you maintain what we agreed on and what we discussed, and we invested a lot of time already on this issue trying to work with you. Don't betray the community. What you're doing now is listening to the people that are destroying our health and the environment, the oil industry. You need to listen to us and come to your senses. I have been in Wilmington going door to door to people who live so close to these oil drilling activities. You can't stand the noise because they come and clean up with this big truck and the smell. And it's so rudimentary the way they do it that they have to undo the hose, and then put it back on. And in the meantime, all these vapors are coming out. And even the guys working in there, they shouldn't be exposed to that. You need to maintain what you work with us about the distance. Don't change it. Especially, I hope that Councilman Buscaino, that you respect what we have worked before with the staff. We spent a lot of time. We don't have a lot of funding. We don't have a lot of lawyers. Our lawyers is not even here today because we only have one. The people are not able to come and express and fight for this themselves for the distance that you are from Wilmington. But the people there are suffering. And the least you can do is maintain the distance that we agreed upon. Why do you change it now and you never even told us so that we could at least work out something with you about the distance? This is really betraying the trust that we have on you. Over and over it happens. So I hope that you maintain the distance that we had agreed upon before, that we have worked with you and spent time to come to that agreement?
I don't understand this. If a smell is coming from a location, it has to go the first foot before it goes any distance, right? So if we were regulating 1 inch, forget 1,500 feet, we would be shutting down that smell from wherever it emanates, right?
Well, I am not sure if I'm understanding exactly what you're saying.
Well, let me try and make myself clear, because if we're regulating a smell and the fence line is here and the smell comes out for 1 foot, they're in violation.
Yes.
So why do I need to go 1,500 feet? Because as soon as they come outside, they're in violation.
Yes, but how many times is it going to take for it to be a violation?
Well, let's get to you were arguing about the feet a minute ago. Now we're going to the number of times. But let's talk about the feet for a minute. So you agree that no matter if it's 1 foot or 9 miles, the violation occurs when the smell comes outside the fence.
Dr. Burke, could I maybe try and clarify all this one more time?
Yeah, sure. Because that's.
Okay, so the 1,500 feet reference.
Could I just suggest that perhaps we ought to have it translated into Spanish for some of the people that are here that may not understand English that well? Would that be acceptable?
Yes, I need my
saying.
coworker Bahram to come and help me out with this.
Okay.
But I think what Dr. Burke, Dr. Wallerstein has to say should perhaps be translated.
And there is a translator here, and we have provided headphones for those that have asked for headphones. So what I'm saying is being translated into Spanish.
Yeah, they were in the lobby.
The reference to 1,500 feet appears 6 places in the rule. The industry has agreed to 5 of those 6 places, as was in the package in July. For the 6th place, what they've said is, and what the staff thinks is a fair approach here, is under the current rule that exists today, they have to do a daily inspection of what are called stuffing boxes and the produced gas handling control equipment if it's within 328 feet of that equipment. What we have before you in the amendment by Dr. Parker is to leave that in place, that it would automatically still be, as it is currently, a daily inspection if you're within 328 feet. Then what Dr. Parker has added is from the distance of 328 feet to 1,500 feet, if the facility receives 2 notices of violation, then they have to go to daily. And there's no time limit on when those 2 notices of violation occur. So 1,500 is really throughout the rule, and the industry really, in my view, has accepted a rule that is intended to address the community's concerns. And I'd lastly say
I got to say, if I was an industry guy, my first thing would be what do you mean? There's no time limit on this. You mean if I have one in 2001 and another violation in 2025? That doesn't make sense.
Dr. Burke, they don't expect that, frankly, that they're going to have 2 violations because they keep these things clean. So this is a very strong rule overall. There isn't another agency that I'm aware of that has a rule as good or as protective of the community as this. And if we were comparing this to a loaf of bread, what is here before you today is pretty darn close to that whole loaf of bread.
I should know that, you should not wait for these violations to happen in order to, control the odors. I don't think it should be necessary to do that. It should be something that is on an ongoing basis.
All right. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your testimony. Dr. Tom Williams, haven't seen you in 5 minutes.
This guy needs to get a life.
Dr. Tom Williams, thank you for opening public comments to the amendment to the motion, separate from the main motion. As part of LA 32 Neighborhood Councils, we have to take ethics training, and that was one of the issues that was brought up. Okay, for this amendment, 328 feet. Well, if you're operating the Inglewood field, you can have a lot of odor without any complaints because the boundary lines are much further than that. 1,500 feet means that if you're in the downhill drainage from a heavy gas, dense gas source, it may go 1,500 feet, it may go 2,500 feet. But if there's nobody to complain and you're far enough away, then you can do anything you want. However, cold air, yes, cold air, dense gas drainage, without the wind at night and early in the morning, I usually recommend odor complaints should be done at 6 a.m. in the morning, and then use Twitter to notify everybody else, because you got to have 3 separate people complaining about the same odor in order to get a notice of violation. But for this amendment, we didn't have it in a timely fashion to see how it relates to these other issues of 1,500 feet, or the difference between a confirmed complaint and a notice of violation. So we're quite concerned regarding this amendment. We do not believe it is reasonable, and especially not to be given it at 9:40 in the morning so that we can review it. So I would highly recommend to go back to the original wording, which everybody had commented on and which everyone had access to in a timely fashion, rather than this amendment, or continue this and allow written public comments to be submitted till the next session. Oh, by the way, I won't be here in October. I have to go to the Society of Petroleum Engineers Conference in Houston, Texas. Yeah, I'm a member of the oil and gas industry. And another one.
Could we get him to extend the conference by a month?
If you could get me a link. However, there is one way of solving the problem. Make all of them require the same facilities at Pico and Genesee, which is a 13-story windowless building, which allows all the odor to go up and out at 130 feet above the system. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would Yvonne Watson come to the vacant microphone, and Samuel Sukutar?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Yvonne Watson. I'm with the Sierra Club. I'm also a resident of the city of Montebello. I would like to thank you for all the work that you've done on these 2 rules. And I'd also like to say that I do support all the comments that Dr. Tom Williams just made. And I have to voice my opposition to the amendment. I don't think it was fair to spring this amendment on us at the last minute and give us just a few minutes right here on the fly to try to analyze this and how it's going to affect the rest of the rule. And I think it would be good to give us additional time to do a thorough analysis. I'd also like to say that in answer to Dr. Burke's questions, the reason why this is so important, we were under the impression that the whole purpose of the amendments for Rules 1148.1 and 1148.2 were to bring the two rules in harmony with each other. And how can you have harmony when one rule says 1,500 feet for all these different activities, and the other rule says, well, it's 1,500 feet with one exception? Well, that doesn't make any sense. And like Dr. Tom was saying, there are situations where the 1,500 feet, it may sound like it's just arbitrary to you, or it doesn't really, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference to the industry, and it makes a difference to the people who live in these communities. In Montebello, there's a proposal to build homes as close as 150 feet to active oil wells. Now, what's there now is nothing. It's just a big empty area, and in fact, that's the area that just burned in the Lincoln fire a few weeks ago. And for right now, we're being told that while there's been no violations reported by the community in Montebello, well, that's because nobody right now in Montebello lives close enough to those wells. But once the housing development is put in, then you are going to have people living close enough to those wells to notice. And just because the public hasn't said anything about the current oil wells doesn't mean that there weren't any violations. I found out that they actually had notices of violation from SCAQMD, but nobody in Montebello was told that. We were only told, oh, well, none of the citizens have complained. Well, who cares about the citizens? They did get a violation. So how can you trust the oil companies to do the right thing when they're not giving the full truth to the public, and especially when there is records and court cases where certain companies have been very unethical in the way they handle their emissions? I'm thinking primarily of the company that used to be in Montebello, the one that used to be the operator of the Inglewood oil field, where they were actually cheating behind the scenes to cover up the fact that they were doing things to get around the emission standards that they were given in place. So I'm just asking you, please do not pass this amendment and give the people a chance to look at it before you even consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Would Samuel Sukar come to the vacant microphone?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you are there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we'll, Barres Civic from Esperanza Community. I'm sorry. I really messed it up, huh? I'm going to be really... Yeah, but I'm going to really be interested to hear how it is. Yes, sir. Your name and your testimony.
I promise I did try to make it legible this time. Sam Sukatan from the Sierra
You did
Club.
Very good job. Very good job.
Chairman Burke, members of the board, I'll be brief. To echo Yvonne and to echo Tom, all the comments that have come in initially, all the comments that you collected at the, I believe it was the July meeting, revolved around this rule having a 1,500 foot language, not the current 100 meter or 328 foot language. It's really critical, speaking as a resident of Koreatown, a neighbor to a lot of these communities dealing with these wells, to have the broader 1,500 foot, again, to bring it rules 1148.1 and .2 in harmony. We would either appreciate more time to process this with staff and with you, or if that's not, if you feel that we don't have the time for that, to vote down this amendment outright today, excuse me. That's it. It's my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm dying to hear.
Good morning. My name is Rabia Sen, and I'm with Esperanza Community Housing Corporation. We work with residents and communities who are affected by the Alanco site in South Central Los Angeles. And originally, we came here today to urge you to support the original amendment and have found this amendment that was just passed out. And I have to say that we cannot support this. We can't support it based on the very issue of process, transparency, and reaching out to the communities who will be most impacted by this new proposed amendment. And so we ask you to vote it down or to delay it and to actually go out and do community outreach and community meetings. A very simple fact of process and transparency is that this has not even been translated into a language that is actually accessible to many of the communities who will be affected by this. And when we talk about transparency, I do recall a comment being made that many of the industries feel that they actually won't have any violations. Well, I'm here to tell you that even one violation is one violation too many. The fact of the matter is that these rules put undue burden on the communities, which includes children, to come and let AQMD know that there is a violation happening. And then they have to wait for confirmation of that violation happening. That, in my opinion, is an undue burden and it's unfair. The onus needs to be on the very industries who are actually doing this practice. They should not be relying on the communities in the area to be able to say that, you know what, you guys are in violation. And when we talk about that, you know, it comes back to this issue of process and transparency. If this is going to affect those communities, if the undue burden to bring violations to your attention is based on those communities, then this amendment that has just been proposed this morning is unfair. It has no transparency. It does not respect the communities, and it does not ask for their input. So we strongly urge you to do one of two things. One is to vote down this amendment and to go with the original one, or the other is to just go ahead and delay this vote and actually go out into the community and do outreach and community meetings in languages that are accessible, and to get that input from the community, and then to come back and consider this with full information. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That concludes our testimony on both the rule and the amendment. Ms. Mitchell?
I'm going to suggest that it may be appropriate to continue this item to the next meeting unless staff thinks there's some urgency in adopting it today. Could I hear from staff on that?
The board certainly could delay this, but we have a stack of rules that are getting delayed, and then the agendas are getting quite full, and the staff needs to turn its attention to the air quality management plan. So the more times we bring the package back, then it's you know, we're going to create problems, quite honestly. The debate was here before the board the entire time that the board has had hearing on this matter, of some folks feeling it should stay at the original distance, some folks obviously feeling very, very strongly that it should be at 1,500 feet. All that has happened here in this provision pertaining to 1,500 feet is everything that was originally covered at 100 meters is still covered at 100 meters. And what we've done is extended that provision that would go from weekly to daily inspections for the distance between 100 meters, in essence, and the 1,500 feet. That's the only difference here. This is still a 1,500-foot rule, but there is a trigger for it. And so this is, in my view, very protective of the community. And it is within the scope of the discussion that the board has been taking testimony on the entire time.
Thank you. I agree that it's still very protective of the community, and that the amendment affects a very narrow portion of the rule that deals only with the requirement for inspections. But I am also have concerns about the comments made here this morning that they've just gotten the amendment, they haven't had time to review it or bring it back to their communities to discuss. So that's a concern that I have. I don't know if anyone else shares that, but I will just mention it is a concern.
Mr. Chair?
Mayor Polito?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I, for one, am ready to vote today, and let me tell you why. I think it's important that we do the business on behalf of the community, and the community are a whole lot of folks. There's a lot of people out there that, that we have to represent. Whenever you have an amendment, it's an amendment. It's something that's been introduced relatively recently, and somebody's going to say, well, I haven't had a chance to look at the amendment. But if you look at this amendment, and I've seen a lot of them, this one's relatively simple. We're not redoing the whole rule. We don't have, 30 different clauses that you have to really read the fine line. This is basically a very surgical amendment for very specific areas, impacting really, I think, a very small number of people, if any. And if there are receptors, if there are people within those locations, this takes that into account. So I think it's important we vote today. We've got a ton of other things that we're going to have to keep working on. And if we don't vote today, then this just becomes another thing on the to-do list. And I think we have to be supportive of the community at large, of staff, and do our job. And sometimes it means maybe everything isn't perfect, but this is quite good. So I'm ready to vote, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Parker, did you want to speak, or had you taken your?
I wanted to, I think Mayor Polito has voiced my sentiments exactly. My amendment did not take any community sensitive receptors out of the rule. It really did what we are required by law to do, and that is to balance the concerns. And that's why when we make rules, it says that we must do CEQA and all these other kinds of things in order to make sure that everybody's concerns are actually heard. Now, how do we get there? Is that, and what happens once someone crosses the line is still there. But to the extent itself of how do we get there is something that we've attempted to do here, and that is not, and I want all of the people who are in opposition to understand, it was never my intent, it is not my intent now, to gut the real heart itself of these rules, but to make them so that, yes, these industries understand that if they step across these lines, they're going to have to come down with the wrath itself of this agency on them in order to make sure that the people in the community are protected. That's all it is. And we have a very difficult task here sitting as board members. We have to, one, make sure that the air is clean, two, that industry, et cetera, that we exist with in this community today can still exist, and that the people themselves have faith that we are going to do what everyone is saying that our job is really here to do, and that is to do the protection of everyone across the board. I think when we do that, I at least carry that out, and all of my committee meetings and here on this board, I never lose sight of that particular situation. I myself directly have lived close to all of these sensitive receptors. Just own a home directly in the View Park, Baldwin Hills area. We talk about signs and those kinds of things, saying to people exactly if you have concerns, you're supposed to call us. Those signs are there. I own property itself near the West Adams communities, and is very sensitive and have owned properties there for 50 years or more. But I don't want anyone to think that my rule is to say that we're lessening the impact itself of what has to happen. It's just when we get there, yes, that's what we're going to have to do. So I know I didn't have to say that, but I wanted to say that since Mayor Polito has voiced that concern, and I think we have a twofold thing, and that's very difficult sometimes, and that is to balancing these two concerns.
I have a question for legal. I have a gentleman here who put in a speaking card, but he wrote the wrong item on it, so I put it in the items for 39, but the clerk has just told me he wanted to speak on 37. So what do I do?
Dr. Burke, as the chair, you have broad discretion here, I think, as a legal matter. You know, the rules are very clear that people have to submit cards and identify the item that they're speaking towards.
Excuse
but-
me.
Where's Dave?
I believe that
Where's
that
Dave?
he was confused on
Dave
that.
Mix?
Is that correct?
Where are you?
Let him speak.
Yeah.
It'll
come on
take
down.
longer to argue.
I'd like to hear your testimony, but we're gonna, you gotta.
I'll keep it
on your-
very brief.
On your homework.
Thank you very much for your time. I want to ask you to oppose this today. I have a mother who lives near one of the sites in Rancho Cucamonga. Every morning, I go to her home and I try to cheer her up because she has such difficulty breathing every morning. I don't know if you've ever been with an elderly person in the morning near one of these sites.
I am an elderly person.
My mother's 82. She served the Glendora School District for 30 years. She served her community. She loved her community. And watching her struggle to breathe every morning is very difficult for me. I know you guys have the power in your hands today to shoot this down and insist that we change from 300 feet to 1,500 feet. That'll make
Gary's
a
got
huge
something,
difference
Bill.
in a large number of lives. So I just ask that you guys stop, take a deep breath for a moment, like my mother's trying to do, like so many people are trying to do today. Take a deep breath. We're not under any pressure, under any governance to make this happen today. Please, let's take the time to stop and think about our children and our elderly. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes our testimony. We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk open the roll for Supervisor Antonovich? He demands that the roll. Close the roll.
Mayor Yates has to vote.
Oh,
It's right next to you.
is he in yet? Yeah. Oh, okay, close the roll. Item passes 11-2. Item 38.
That's a long. Here we go again.
But I don't have any speaker slips on 38.
No, but he's got an amendment too.
Mr. Chairman, you closed the
Clerk
public
this.
testimony, so it's now with the board to
On
decide
38
what
also?
the board would like to do with the staff proposal.
I'm sorry, you got drowned out.
Okay. Last month, you took testimony, you
On to-
closed the public testimony.
Okay.
The item is now with the governing board for discussion, any modifications, decision-making, and any questions of
Got it.
staff.
Okay.
Dr. Parker, do you have an amendment to this particular rule? We're waiting on you, I think.
Yes, I do.
Oh, no.
And I think people can testify on this amendment.
Is that they really, I think the most important, are we going to have that posted so that everyone can see? No projection? Oh, okay. I think this has also been passed out.
No. Oh, wrong one.
Okay, Paul, you got to stay sharp.
Is that the amendment itself that we are proposing to the actual rule, I said to the rule, is changing primarily less than 24 hours to less than 48 hours. Is that bold italics, single underline language that is there in paragraph number 3 is as follows. If the start date for the drilling well completion or rework of an onshore oil or gas well notification submitted to the executive officer pursuant to subparagraph D1E is anticipated to occur before the originally projected noticed start date and time, the operator shall electronically notify the executive officer at least 48 hours prior to the new start date and time.
So Dr. Burke, if I could just say a word or two here. So the existing rule, as Dr. Parker was noting, is 24 hours. The staff proposal that was before you last month was going to 72 hours. The community members strongly preferred 72 hours or more. They really wanted more. And the industry position was they really felt that the 24 hours was appropriate. And as I understand the motion, it comes right down the middle and goes for 48 hours. Well, this is not, the testimony is closed on this item. You closed it last month.
We do have cards there.
This is just a board discussion, and then Dr. Parker's put a motion on the floor, and if he gets a second, then the board will consider whether you want to go with 48 as opposed to the original staff proposal of 72.
So we don't have to take any more testimony?
No, that's correct, Dr. Burke. I advised on the previous item that you allow additional testimony on the amendment because there had been some people that had the opportunity to testify today that did testify on the amendment. So the concern there was that everybody get the opportunity to testify. Here, nobody testifies on the amendment.
So the purpose of these provisions is that if there's going to be drilling work or something of that nature, well stimulation, that the community has an opportunity to get a notice so that if the community members decided that they wanted to go to a friend's house, a relative's house, or someplace else to be away from home at the time the work is occurring, that they have an opportunity to have a notice and be able to make other arrangements. So this, under Dr. Parker's proposal, this would give 2 days' notice.
Dr. Liu?
Yeah, I think I need some clarification on that. I'm a little uncomfortable with proposing substantive changes and not allowing the public to testify on those changes, and would wonder if procedurally we could reopen the record to allow for it if that was our decision.
Dr. Burke, if I might, in connection with adopting regulations, the board considers amendments all the time. And I would caution you that the board doesn't reopen public testimony every time a board member offers an amendment or that amendment is in fact seconded and put up as a matter of discussion by the board. So
Can I ask again, do we have the discretion to reopen the record and allow for public testimony?
It's a discretion that is that's the chair's.
The chair's
Excuse me.
discretion. Letting me know.
Excuse me, may I speak, Dr. Burke?
I'm sorry?
Barbara.
This is Barbara. May I speak to
Sure.
the board's adopted procedures have stated, and this is the procedures under paragraph D, receipt of testimony, provides that after closing testimony, the board continues the item to a later time for deliberations and voting, which is what you've done.
then the public testimony may not be reopened at the continued hearing unless you either fully renoticed the rule, which was not done, or prior to the continuance, the board announced that its intention to reopen public testimony. So what that means is if the board wanted to reopen public testimony, it would again have to renotice.
October.
But I think that it's quite correct that every time we have a rule before us, we have the possibility that during the board deliberations, someone will make an amendment, and that doesn't trigger reopening the public testimony.
Okay, so that was just the preliminary stuff. Thank you for that, Barbara. That really actually helps, and it makes sense. It's a sensible process for us to follow, and I actually have my own proposal to make a change to the resolution language that I would like to share and try to get in. With regard to this particular issue, I think one of the problems that the community members who live next to these production facilities voiced was that there is a provision that comes right after this one that's being proposed to be amended that says that there'd be no more than 5 successive 24-hour extensions. And I think that they were very uncomfortable with having as many as 5 extensions. Given this change, I think maybe, as Dr. Parker has mentioned, in balancing things, we might want to reduce the number of extensions that were allowed under this, so that the community wasn't constantly being notified and re-notified and re-notified and re-notified 5 times potentially. I had no idea that this was even going to come up today, so that's why I'm making those comments. The issue that I was concerned about was the interpretation of the plain language of the regulation and the notice of the communities. So I've spoken quite a bit about this, but I think that, you know, providing notice to the communities is of utmost importance on this. They raised an issue during the process about the different type of wells that are used for injecting fluids and wells that are used for extracting product. And the injection wells, staff has interpreted the language to exclude it. When I read the plain language of the rule, I read it as defining wells in a way that doesn't exclude injection wells. So I've talked to this quite a bit, and I'll stop at this point, but when we get to the substance of making motions, I'll come back and make a motion on that.
Supervisor Benoit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to state for the record that I support Dr. Parker's 48-hour, and also state that in terms of the process, we heard from folks who would like it to be much longer than 72 hours. We know the industry feels constrained and they thought 24 was plenty. So it's not like we haven't heard the opinions that we would potentially hear. We took those into consideration. We're taking them into consideration as we make this thoughtful decision today. But I did want to state for the record that I think that the 48 hours is a good compromise, and I would be willing to have a discussion about, with a 48-hour notice, then could we live with one less extension, for instance? But we have that, I think, absolutely heard all the testimony, and we can make those decisions now, and it's our duty to do so.
Dr. Burke, could I just clarify that the current rule language is unlimited extensions and that the proposal before you is 5? And there isn't a lot of difference between the extension notices and doing the original notice or re-notice?
So if that's, well, Dr. Parker brought the, would you like to make the motion, or could I include your change?
Yes, you can include my change.
I would move recommendation of this, I would move approval of the rule as provided to us in the agenda with the one change, that we change from 72 hours to 48 hours notice requirement. And
do we have a second?
Second.
All right, will the clerk open the roll?
Or do you, wait, a minute, I think.
Is there any
Mr.
comment?
Chairman,
No.
yes,
I'm
if
sorry.
if I could, I'd like to propose
then-
an amendment to the motion that would reduce the number of extensions from 5 to 3. And also, if I could have this language, I don't know if the clerk could get this language up, which changes the resolution language. It might need to have, hold on a second. We might need to show both of these because one is the definition of a well that's in the language, and the other is just basically saying that the plain language of the regulation doesn't exclude injection wells, and that we direct the board to treat injection wells and production wells the same. But you remember those pictures that we saw during public testimony. One of them was for an injection well, one of them was for production well. There was actually, I think, one more truck for the injection well than there was production well, and a lot of the same things happened. Anyway, I'd like to move that we strike this one paragraph that talks about the strike this one paragraph that has to do with coming back to the Stationary Source Committee about injection wells, and say, and direct staff to treat injection wells and production wells the same.
Dr. Burke, that amendment that Dr. Liu has proposed that addresses injection wells would constitute a substantial change to the meaning of the rule, which would require renoticing of the rule with that amendment before the board could consider it.
And I would say that if you look at the language of the definition of a well, it does not exclude injection wells. And it wasn't staff's intention when we voted on this regulation. Certainly, when I voted on this regulation, if I knew that staff was going to make a different determination between the treatment of an injection well and a production well, I would have raised the issue. We would have discussed the issue before voting on it. When I voted for this, my interpretation was it included all wells, as defined in the rule.
So, Dr. Liu, Susan's the one that has done the most work on this rule, so I'd like her to say whether the documents and the intent of the rule as we drafted either included it or didn't include it, so that we have clarity. If it didn't, if that really wasn't the intent, then we're just simply saying if it's the board's desire, we would need to come back with a rule amendment and a full rule package.
When we drafted the Rule 1148.2, it wasn't the intention to include water injection wells. We had discussed this with a working group meeting, and it was our understanding that those particular wells did not have any flowback fluid associated with them, which was our primary concern at that time. And then since this round of amendments to Rule 1148.2, the issue of notifications for water injection wells came up because similar types of equipment would be used. And that wasn't our thought process for excluding it at that time. So staff committed to come back, and the board directed us through the resolution to return back to Stationary Source with the water injection wells. And that's why we had that resolution language.
I looked through the staff report. There was no discussion of this. I don't attend work group meetings, but when it came to us, this wasn't discussed the first time around.
The resolution that's in this package has us looking at the issue of injection wells and coming back to the board on that issue. We wouldn't have put it in a resolution if we thought it was already in the rule. So I would suggest that if there is this lack of clarity, that you would, before you would say that it's in, since the staff is saying that prepared the rule that it isn't, the intent of the staff, that you would renotice and do it through a rulemaking.
Perhaps staff or council could explain to me, given the definition of a well, how it excludes an injection well that's in the rule.
Well,
Can you put the definition back up, Paul? Just the definition, the bottom part.
And Dr. Liu, really, a lot of this has to do with the analysis that was done in connection with formulating the rule package. In doing that analysis, injection wells simply weren't included. So when things like the socioeconomic impacts of the rule were considered, the CEQA document, and so on, injection wells just weren't part of the analysis. So I think that has to be borne in mind when you take a look at the definition and try and sort out whether injection wells are included or not.
It's just my understanding that the first thing you do is go to the plain language of the regulation. And when I turned to the plain language of the regulation, I didn't see how we had, certainly my intent was not to have a restrictive interpretation of it when I voted on it the first time.
So
that's why I'm trying to fix that.
No, Dr. Liu, what Kurt is saying and what I'm also saying is, on the spot here, we don't have the original CEQA document, the original staff report in front of us. We have to go back and review that, look at response to comments and so on to see what is otherwise in the record regarding this. But
it's been a couple months. I did do that, prior to our July meeting, and I don't remember seeing anything in any of those documents that mentioned a difference between the two types of wells, quite honestly. I trust that Susan's correct that it did come up during the work group process, but that didn't make it into the record that came before us.
So what is your pleasure now?
Well, I would like to move that we adopt the resolution language that I have proposed.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk open the roll?
Chairman, I want to first of all say I respect my colleague Dr. Liu's concerns about the other type of well. But I believe that by voting to include this, as staff has indicated, we would be putting off the whole topic, which I think is an important step towards public safety and deserves to be moved now so we can get these regulations into effect as soon as possible. It's maybe unfortunate that the injection well issue wasn't brought up originally. Maybe unfortunate that it wasn't included, but it wasn't included, and it wasn't part of the public record. It wasn't part of the CEQA, and therefore can't be adopted without going back and starting the process over. In the end, we would end up probably getting to January or February before we could adopt this rule if we took that path. Therefore, eliminating the protections that we're offering today. We've already committed to coming back with a second round regarding injection wells within basically the same time frame. So I would respectfully urge my colleagues not to adopt this because I don't want to put off the adoption of the broader protections included in the original motion.
Any further comment?
So it's my understanding, Dr. Burke, that Dr. Parker's asking for no vote and Dr. Liu is asking for a yea vote. Yes.
This is not on Dr. Parker's motion. This is on
Okay.
Dr. Liu's motion.
But,
I'm sorry.
Right.
I just want to comment on the procedural dilemma that we have in front of us. But, and I do respect Dr. Liu's suggestion here as well. We're not precluded from looking at injection wells in the future if that is the desire of this board and going through another process that covers injection wells. So I think procedurally we have a difficulty here to accept the amendment to the resolution. I also want to suggest that on the resolution, there's a couple housekeeping matters since if we are voting on the rule to change to 48 hours, there are a couple of places in the resolution that refer to...
We're not voting on that yet.
No, we're not, but...
This is just the amendment. I'll come back to you
Okay,
On the roll.
okay. It's just
Come back.
housekeeping cleanup in our resolution, so.
Okay,
wanna
we'll come
mention
back
that.
to you on that. Okay, this is on the roll, on the amendment by Dr. Liu. Would you open the roll, please? Close the roll. The motion fails 10-1. Now, back to Ms. Mitchell.
So in the resolution, there are at least two locations where we refer to the time frame of 24 to 72 hours for notification. I think we might have to change that to the 48 hours. I just quickly glanced at it and saw there was a couple of references to that 72-hour time period. So it is a housekeeping matter, but
That's correct. So we would, I assume you're asking that we make the resolution conform to whatever is adopted in the
conform to
regulation.
whatever rule is adopted.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
That's correct.
Is that it? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the roll. Would the clerk open the roll? No, this is on the motion. The amendment was defeated.
I'm sorry, this is the rule with the Parker amendment?
Yes,
that what-
this is the
okay.
rule with the Parker amendment. Close the roll, close the roll. That motion passes 11-1. Okay. Item 39.
Morning, Dr. Burke.
How are you this morning?
Very good, thank you. Dr. Burke, members of the board, my name's Tracy Goss, Planning and Rules Manager, and I'll be giving you a short presentation on our proposed amendments to Rule 1156. Rule 1156 continues to affect only two facilities here in the South Coast Air Basin, neither of which produce clinker anymore, which is the building block for cement. Many of the board members were not here back in 2007-2008 timeframe during the MATES 3 process, where we found elevated levels of hexavalent chromium at our Rubidoux monitoring station. At that time, we were able to trace those elevated levels back to the cement manufacturing process. And in 2009, the governing board adopted amendments to Rule 1156 that added, among other things, a fence line requirement based on 100 in a million cancer risk, a fence line standard with monitoring requirements. The board resolution at that time directed staff to return after receiving 5 years of monitoring data to evaluate the need for and the frequency of the monitoring, and also to address the issue of facility closure in the event that one or both facilities do so. This proposed amendment addresses both of those items. Both facilities are located between the 10 and the 60 freeway along what is known as the Aguamansa corridor. They're approximately 3 miles apart, and the most southern facility, Riverside Cement, is 2.5 miles north of the Rubidoux monitoring station. The Riverside Cement facility is approximately 300 acres, and California Portland Cement facility is about 500 acres. We did an extensive rule development process. We made a number of changes along the way. One of those changes also included a continuation of the public hearing for 90 days in response to concerns by the facilities, and then also to continue to work with the facilities about the rule language. During that time, a number of changes were made. The proposal contains 3 key elements. The first, the ability to reduce the number of monitors from the current mandated number of 3. Provisions for facility closure and the cessation of monitoring itself under specific conditions. And then the lowering of the fence line limit from 0.7 to 0.2 nanograms per cubic meter in conjunction with OEHA's latest guidance. Relative to the implementation of that 0.2 fence line limit, it will kick in within 1 year, and if that limit is exceeded, a compliance plan will be required unless the facility is subject to Rule 1402. Then the fence line standard will not be considered a violation until 3 years after rule adoption. As can be seen from this graphic, looking historically at the California Portland cement monitoring data, they have been well below the 0.2 standard, the new proposed standard, for a very long time. However, when you look at Riverside Cement Company, they have had occasions where they have exceeded this new proposed 0.2 standard, but I would like to point out that every time that they've had a spike, the facility's been able to make adjustments and bring the concentrations down. We believe that in this case, it demonstrates that monitoring has worked, and we believe that the facility can make adjustments to stay below the 0.2 standard. And as I said before, if they were to exceed after the first year, they would only have to work on a compliance plan unless they're under Rule 1402. We did conduct both a CEQA and environmental assessment. The CEQA document did not find any adverse impacts associated with the proposal. We did not receive any comments on the CEQA document. Relative to cost, with the reduction of monitoring, there is a potential cost savings associated with this. However, for Riverside Cement, were they to exceed the 0.2 standard, there could be some costs associated with meeting the standard. The numbers that you see before you are our worst case estimates. We have received comments from Riverside Cement. Many of those comments that you received lately are addressed in the staff report and also in the response to comments. I do want to just touch on a couple of these real briefly. Riverside Cement has requested additional time to comply with the standard. We have modified the rule so that it's not a violation until 3 years from the date of adoption. Concern that the facility is the source of the violation or the exceedance. The facility has expressed concern about other sources around the facility. We have added a provision that we will look at all relevant data and information before confirming that the facility is the source of the exceedance, and that will be an iterative process with the facility. And then also the facility suggested that upon closure that we rely on our regional network. And as I mentioned, the Rubidoux monitoring station is 2.5 miles away. We do not believe it's reflective of the local conditions. Regarding a few other issues, the facility has asked that the compliance plan not be required for a one-time exceedance, but this is exactly why we have a rolling average as a part of our standard. Regarding Rule 1402, instead of a compliance plan that was added to the rule, although the facility did raise the issue that they thought that this was a new requirement that had been added to the rule since the release of the CEQA document, staff does not agree with that. We just believe that what we're doing is we're providing an option that if they're under Rule 1402, they need not submit a compliance plan. And with regards to facility closure requirements, we do believe that it's important to monitor, not only continue to monitor while they're in operation, but to continue monitoring during facility closure to ensure that there's no emissions that we need to be worried about in the future, given the long history that has occurred with these facilities and that they've been around 75 to 100 years. The only thing we ask is upon the cleanup or the reclamation that they just monitor for 90 more days just to make sure that everything is fine and the public health is protected. I do want to show just a few pictures for you. It is a very dusty environment at these facilities. The picture on the left is actually inside a processing building. The picture on the right is an example of the buildup that can occur over years at the facility. And where it looks relatively firm, when you start breaking it up and you start doing reclamation, it can get pulverized down to a dust that can get re-entrained. And that is of concern, and that is one reason why we want to continue monitoring during the reclamation and cleanup activities. When we talk about the cleanup activities, this is an example. You can see accumulation around the base of this operating equipment. What we want to do is when this equipment is being demolished and the plant is being repurposed through demolition, grading, excavation, we know that chrome 6 can persist in the soil, and we just want to be protective of the public health during that time. We do believe that monitoring works. As you can see here, we have a monitor at one of the facilities, and there's a residential area just across the street. We do believe that monitoring works, and we do believe it's important to continue doing the monitoring so that we can ensure the public health protection. With that, Mr. Chair and members of the board, I would like to recommend that you certify the environmental assessment and adopt the amendments to Rule 1156. Thank you.
Thank you. Prior to board questions or comments, I have several requests to speak. First up, first microphone, David Perkins. The other microphone, Michael Mirnan. Did I get that right, Mirnan?
You folks are reminded that you have 3 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
State your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is David Perkins, and I represent Riverside Cement Company, Chairman and Board. Thank you for the opportunity for us to speak today. I just want to reflect a couple of very brief comments to share our opposition to the rule as currently drafted. First, to say we're not opposed to making changes to fence line standards or to the closure process, but as the rule is currently drafted, we still feel like there are some significant concerns that need to be fully vetted and fully understood before this rule is finalized and adopted. I'll make 3 points. Essentially, this rule is premature. We still feel like there is a lot of information that we need to obtain and to understand with regard to background concentrations. You probably saw the picture there of the 2 facilities, and you can see that there's a significantly higher amount of industrial activity around our facility as opposed to the other facility. And we also sit on significantly smaller property. So those factors really need to be considered when you take into consideration background concentrations. We've actually shown some data that would potentially exceed this on days when we haven't even been operating. So we've obviously got some natural concerns that there are off-site sources that really need to be better assessed in order to truly understand this. And we have concerns about the ability to actually meet these standards as they're currently written. The other key piece here is the guidance that was used to develop the new fence line standards relies on the OEHA documentation, and there's a report there, the Mancuso report, that we have not had an opportunity to fully vet. We feel like we need to have more time to be able to truly understand how that information was developed. Our second concern primarily is that the language as it's written is unworkable and very difficult to implement. Probably the biggest key piece here is the definition of facility. If we were to sell the property and somehow subdivide it into multiple other properties for redevelopment, this poses the question of what kind of monitoring networks are going to be required to be put in place after that time. We really simply can't even begin to understand that, and you feasibly could have the potential of multiple monitors. If you've got 5, 6, 7 separate sites, they could each have 3 monitors. So how does this rule get implemented from that standpoint? The other concern is the monitoring process after closure, after surrender of the permits, is potentially unending and evergreen. This monitoring, if you have an exceedance, could continue to go on and on and on. So we need to have some kind of an objective, finite closure process to be put in place. The other concern is the subjectivity, how this basically is subject to the executive officer's approval. There's a lot of subjectivity there, and we're concerned that we're not going to be able to ultimately ever get a final decision on the closure. The final point is that we truly believe that it exceeds the authority. We're really getting into brownfields redevelopment here, and there are already adequate and protective regulations in place that manage and handle old industrial facilities and help to address air emissions. And we feel like that doesn't need to be overreached by this regulation. Appreciate the opportunity. We feel like there's just a need simply to extend consideration of this rule and basically adopt it at a later time for further review. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Would Howard Ballantyne come to the vacant microphone? Go ahead, sir. State your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Michael Minen. I'm the Environmental and Regulatory Manager for Riverside Cement. I've been doing this work for cement plants throughout the state and the country since I was 25 years old. I have a unique perspective. I'm the one negotiating with the South Coast staff, but I'm also the one that has to comply with all these rules. I think there's a few things you guys need to understand before you pass this rule. Is data. Our site is extremely complex with meteorology, these monitoring stations. There's a lot of different operating scenarios. We do have 5 years of data with a lot of different operating scenarios. What we're asking is some more time to go back and evaluate that. There's a key question that needs to be asked is the main point. Can we comply while operating with this 0.2 limit? No. I've been telling staff that since day one. Though that data you're seeing is not at full production. There is issues with the background information. To point out that the one that went above the 0.2 in the last few months, that's our background monitor. That is not a downwind monitor. So when we were saying issues that there's still complexities with the site, and we've been offering to do studies and continue to work with the staff. In the staff report, Things like, is it fugitive dust from the pack house, put up a 100-foot wall? No, I don't think the data supports that. Is it fugitives from dust, put down more dust suppression? No, I don't believe the data supports that either. It goes back to the background study. We've been real up front, and South Coast did a lot of investigations 2 years ago when we originally went over that limit. We give them all the data, met data, they have all our production data. We have made leaps and bounds. That graph where you saw those peaks a couple years ago, we are well above our clinker production rate on the mills than we were at that time. We have made tremendous financial, cultural, management changes at that facility. Another major part of this rule is the actual closure language. It's not transparent or clear. I don't know how we will comply, or even South Coast is comply with that language that is put in there. I'm having trouble understanding it. I don't, and it's legitimate concerns. For instance, how does the process work? In 2 years, we sell a parcel. How much time is that going to take? Is it going to be total 7 monitors? What about in 20 years when it gets parceled into 20? Are there going to be 20 monitoring plans? 60 monitors? Also, I keep pointing out, when we close the facility, we're operating now. We don't know what we're going to do with closure. There'll be no power. How are you going to run the monitors? I mean, that's a big one. Security, vandals. We've had a huge issue with copper thieves. Second we leave, those are going to be gone. Everything is up to the executive officer. There's no deadlines.
Sir, your time is up. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Judith Paratis, come to the vacant microphone. Go ahead, sir. State your name for the record.
My name is Howard Ballantyne. I'm a consultant with AECOM, and I've been a consultant to Riverside Cement for nearly 20 years. I have 2 technical comments I'd like to make. The first one is with the Mancuso study that Mr. Perkins mentioned, and the second is following on with Mr. Minen on the monitoring of the background. The validity of the staff risk assessment is fundamentally tied to that Mancuso study because it forms the basis for the risk assessment risk value for hexchrome. And that, without having that study, we can't assess the validity. There's a question on what it was applied to. Most likely, maybe it was performed using data from a chromic acid plating facility, which produces free ions of hexavalent chrome that are very bioavailable. By contrast, the hex chrome in cement dust and clinker is of a state that's tied intimately into the matrix of the cement dust and clinker. And the bioavailability of that is completely different than would be the bioavailability of hex chrome ions. So without having that study to determine what it's based upon, there's uncertainty whether that study is even applicable to this matter at hand. The second issue is on the background concentration. It's not simply a take the numbers and take an average. You have to take into account the averaging time over which you're computing it, the monitoring locations, whether it's a fence line or someplace else, the prevailing wind direction, and the diurnal variation of that wind during the day, background sources in the area, and potential longer range transport. It takes significant time to compute a valid background value, and the staff's development of that background value is not transparent. So Riverside Cement has not been able to really understand what the validity of that background value is. So these 2 technical issues raise questions about the validity of the health risk assessment that forms the basis for the Rule 1156 amendments, and more time is needed to address these issues before the adoption of the rule. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would Jay Grady come to the vacant microphone? Go ahead, ma'am. Identify yourself for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Judith Prytis, Sidley Austin, counsel for Riverside Cement. I have 3 comments that I want to make, 3 points I want to make in wrapping up the company's perspective here. First of all, we feel very strongly that proposed rule of M56 exceeds the AQMD's authority. This rule allows regulation of a former source of emissions. It allows regulation of non-sources of emissions, and it allows regulation of possibly generations of landowners who were never, ever sources of emissions. If you apply the logic of this rule, the AQMD is arrogating to itself authority to enter into any single piece of industrial property in the South Coast Air Basin and claim that they can regulate it based on former emissions from a former industrial facility. We don't think the AQMD's authority goes that far, and we do think that other agencies have clear and established records in handling soils contamination that may be entrained during redevelopment. So that's a critical concern here. This rule goes way too far in usurping the authority of other jurisdictions. Second, we do think the rule is premature because of a lack of transparency. As Mr. Minen, Mr. Perkins have both noted, as well as Mr. Ballantyne, we can't even check the math. We can't even duplicate the calculations. The Mancuso study has been requested. AQMD doesn't have it. AECOM couldn't find it. We literally cannot replicate the fundamental science that undergirds the background standard and the proposed fence line standard, which, by the way, isn't a fence line standard. Those monitors are way in, and they're not on the border of the facility. So that failure of transparency is very, very concerning to us. Finally, there are practical and technical deficiencies in the drafting of this rule. Above all, because the standards are too low, as you know, Mr. Minen said they were exceeded, this could result in the closing of a lawful business because they can't meet a standard. And before that kind of a dire consequence is risked, you really have to be sure that you've got the right numbers, both for background and for the performance standard. Second, you risk turning this facility into a zombie facility that is never going to have any future life. The rules don't have clear standards for closure because they're all subjective. And finally, the monitoring obligation is not just 3 months, it's 3 continuous months of meeting a given standard, and then it keeps getting tripped and tripped and tripped and tripped if you don't meet the standard, which is going to be impossible to do because the numbers are too low. So we do think this is a perpetual obligation, and the subjective basis for closing the facility is one that no person can ascertain. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Jimmy Stewart, come on down. Go ahead, sir. Identify
Yes,
yourself.
Chairman Burke and board members. I am Jay Grady. I'm with Cal Portland Company, or California Portland Cement Company, and I'm here to support the rule. And I'd also like to publicly thank the staff for their work on the rule and their efforts to address our concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. And Angelica Gonzalez is the way I read this. Would you come to the empty microphone?
Hi,
Go
Jim
ahead,
Stewart, representing the Sierra Club. And I think the board has heard quite clearly that we've got 2 facilities, one of which can handle a healthy rule and the other which can't and needs to get its act together. And that we remember why we're here. We're here because of OEHA finally did the correction to the standards in order to take care of children. Remember that the OEHA standards were just for adults. And now we've got the real standards to protect our communities. And so we want to commend the staff for great work on protecting our communities to bring these chromium deadly pollution to the standards that we think will protect the children. And so I urge the board to accept this reasonable rule and to get the bad actor to clean up its act. And relative to this issue of after closure, I'm sure the staff can handle this, but it's clear these places are blowing dust all the time. So if they close up and that land keeps blowing dust into our communities, it's gonna hurt people a lot. So we really are depending upon the board to back up the staff and provide the kind of strong rule that will protect our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Hi, good morning.
Hold on there. Hold it. Take it easy.
Oh,
Back
I'm
down.
sorry.
Cool on. Samuel Sukatron, would you come to the empty microphone from the Sierra Club? I think that's what that says.
See, if I was running the meeting, I'd have gone ahead and let you speak, you know.
I guess he's not here. Go ahead, ma'am. State your name for the record.
Hi, good morning. My name's Angelica again. I am Conservation Manager for the Sierra Club. And on behalf of our chapter, the Angeles chapter, and our over 40,000 members, and of course the community members directly impacted here with the cement plants, we are in full support of Rule 1156. We want to minimize the chromium emissions and protect the public's health. Also coming from a daughter that a father worked in the cement industry for many years and seeing him struggle with a lot of lung ailments, I think it is our main concern to protect the public's health and people around the surrounding communities. And I want to thank the staff for their work. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, I'll give last call to Samuel Sukatan. Samuel Sukatan. Going once, going twice. That's the last of the written requests I have to speak, so we'll close the public comment. I have a request from Supervisor Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have a couple questions for staff based on some of the information in the Riverside Cement letter. They express great concern that they can't see or replicate the math that was done to get to point 2. I am not a mathematician. I couldn't attempt to replicate it, but I think we do have an obligation as an agency to be able to show our work and to have others do so. So if I could hear your response to what Riverside Cement is saying there, please.
Yes, Supervisor. And we have sat down with the facility on multiple occasions and gone through the calculation and sent them detailed information on the calculation. But very simply, the 0.7 fence line standard, which is approximately 100 in a million risk, which was based on the old OEHA guidance for hexavalent chromium that had been in place for many years. If you look at 100 in a million, it equated to about 0.7. With the new guidance that the board is aware of and made those amendments to 1401 and 1402 earlier this year, we know that the new guidance shows that many pollutants are more toxic or have more effects than previously known. And we had said at the time that some pollutants, the toxicity went up by a factor of 2.5, some went up higher, 3 or 4. Very simply, the change from 0.7 to 0.2 is the same factor that the hexavalent chromium risk went up according to the new OEHA guidance. So in a very simple sense, if you take the new OEHA guidance, you divide by 3.8, I believe it is, and you get very close to 0.2. It's actually 0.18, and we did a rounding to 0.2. So it's very simple, and we're relying on OEHA, who has long established procedures. The Mancuso study they mentioned is what OEHA relied on. We're not relying on Mancuso study. We're relying on the OEHA statewide established risk levels for hexavalent chromium.
Okay, thank you for that. There was also some concern over one of the graphs, I believe it's on page 12 of the staff report, where it shows the spikes over the 0.2. Am I correct in understanding that some of those spikes represent days when the plant wasn't operational?
It's quite possible, but again, when you looked at the pictures, you see that it's not necessarily the operation of the plant that may cause the spikes. They are responsible for the dust emissions from their facility. We know from 2007, 2008, when we took multiple dust samples, that there's a lot of hexavalent chromium contamination, and they're responsible, just like construction sites are responsible for controlling dust emissions and stabilizing that dust. So even if they're not operational, if they did not stabilize things correctly or allow dust to accumulate and that dust is emissive, they're still responsible for that. And whether it's an upwind, what they're characterizing as an upwind site or a downwind site, the wind shifts, obviously, over the course of the day. We generally call things upwind, downwind for the daily, for the daytime winds, but the wind shifts at night. So it's quite possible that what is an upwind site at one portion of the day could become a downwind site at another portion of the day, or in the evening or overnight.
Thank you for those clarifications.
Okay.
I don't have any other requests. I've gotten a little heartburn over this item and item 40, being the chairman of the Stationary Source Committee. When we heard this last time from staff, it was back in April, and there were quite a few disparities between the stakeholders and ourselves. And then, boom, it comes to the board. I really don't like to suggest items coming through Stationary Source come to the governing board with so many open items. Then that holds true with item 40. Last time it came to Stationary Source was back in May. At 39 was last, I heard it was in April. And then the odors from rendering plants, last I heard, was in February and May 15th. I'm a little dismayed that, because when we heard both of those at the Stationary Committee, there were several items that need to be resolved, and I don't get to hear the how that story ended till I sit here at the governing board meeting. And obviously the testimony from the folks from Riverside and Portland, they're still asking for more time to understand the numbers that are included in this rule. I don't know, what do you think, Mr. Wallerstein? It's too much lapse time. I'm surprised it didn't come back to the Stationary Source.
Well, I will certainly be happy to work with the vice chair on the items that are coming back to the Stationary Source Committee. When we get to agenda item 4, I can explain where we are with that item. In the case of this item, it came through the board for a set hearing, and we've been meeting, as Dr. Fine was saying, with the company. There's been a number of meetings with the company to try and work things out, and frankly, we're at an impasse where it's going to be up to the board to ultimately decide how to proceed with the regulation.
Well, there was an impasse back in
well, but sometimes you have and Jill wants to say something here. Sometimes you have an impasse, and then you give a little more time, and it gets resolved. In this case, my understanding from where everything's at is I don't think we're going to be resolving this.
Well, I've been chair of the Stationary Source for a whole bunch of long times, and I've had impasses that were either the stakeholder wouldn't budge or we wouldn't budge. We'd come to an impasse. And by that time, the stakeholder knows well that we're sending this as recommended to staff to the governing board. This didn't happen with this particular rule and the odors and rendering facility rule either. I'm just objecting to these two items not coming back to Stationary Source for some type of finalization with the Stationary Source Committee and feeling right about forwarding it to the governing board. And
if I may, what I wanted to add was at that Stationary Source Committee meeting, the Stationary Source Committee said we needed to take 3 more months to continue to work with the facility, and we have made a lot of progress. There's many changes that the staff made to the proposal.
I'm not doubting that at all.
So,
I'm
but
not doubting
we're at a
that.
point where, yes.
Not doubting that at all.
You know, the procedure is normally it comes back to Stationary Source.
I understand.
I can't argue with that, but you know, what's your desire?
Well, I mean, I don't want staff setting a precedence of bypassing not only Stationary or Tech or anybody else.
Or anybody else.
That shouldn't happen. Plus, both stakeholders are requesting more time, and I would prefer that this come back to the Stationary Source for some type of final resolution. If we met at impasse, and I talked to the stakeholders, or the Stationary Source Committee members talk to the stakeholders, and we can't come to a resolution, then the stakeholders and staff will know exactly why the Stationary Source is sending it to the governing board for final decision. but we didn't have that opportunity to do that. Or in the rendering rule in item 40, that didn't happen either, so. But I've been meeting with all the stakeholders in both these rules, and anyway, I'm a little dismayed at both of these rules coming to us without coming through stationary source.
Unless there's a majority opposition of the board's opposition to this, I think that both rules should go back to stationary source. I see that we have already continued the rendering rule until November 6th. Yeah. We may have to.
But I'd like that to come back to stationary.
Continue that longer. I don't know, but I agree with the chair. It's you know, it's just, I don't think it was the appropriate methodology to do that. So, yes, sir.
Well, may I, it may save time, it may not, but I would make a motion to deny the amendment and urge a no vote. So if that were to pass, we could save the committee some time.
You mean 39?
That is the item we're on.
Yeah.
Right.
The, that would be okay, Sean, but I know the one issue about I'm pretty sure Portland's going to close. I mean, they're already knocked down some of the buildings. There's a real sticky point about what they have to go through to sell the property to revitalize that area commercially, and I'd really like to get into that meat and potatoes part of that part too. So I'd just like both of these items to be sent back to the stationary source.
I'll be at the meetings either way.
All right.
Okay, so we will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Well, but you have to get them out.
Oh, I will.
You know. Okay, item 41.
I'm not that easy.
Item 41.
Just a procedural matter. Do we need a vote on that?
Oh.
Didn't get a second.
Well,
what, to continue?
To continue it?
To refer it to stationary source?
I'm ready to vote for the regulation today, but I'm just wondering, do we have to vote on continuing it and
Chair
sending it back to
can refer an
stationary
item
source?
back to a committee?
Yeah, no.
We don't?
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
Yeah, no?
Yeah, no me.
That's exactly what you'd expect out of an attorney.
Is
isn't
that
it?
legally
Yeah,
easy?
no.
Yeah, no.
The yeah, no answer.
I wouldn't think so. I don't think we've ever done that before that I can recall.
Okay, item 41.
Good morning. My name is Susan Nakamura. I'm Director in Planning and Rules. I'm here to bring forward the fourth round of amendments on Rule 1420.1, emission standards for lead and other toxic air contaminants from large lead-acid battery recycling facilities.
Who's this guy?
Sorry. So by way of background, Rule 1420.1 was adopted in November 2010. In March, we brought the rule forward for amendments. We lowered the point source emission rate from 0.045 pound per hour to 0.023 pounds per hour. We also lowered the ambient lead concentration limit to 0.1 micrograms per cubic meter, which would be effective January 1, 2017. Also in March, the board had directed staff to return within 6 months to lower the lead point source emission rate to 0.003 pounds per hour, and also to discuss any other options. Subsequent to March and April 2015, separate from the rulemaking process, Exide announced plans to permanently close. It's a multi-year process to remove the equipment, decontaminate the site, and to fully close the facility. So 1420.1, the amendment will establish the lowest lead point source emission rate in the nation. Will establish a point source emission rate of 0.003 pounds per hour, lowering it from the 0.023. Would become effective immediately. The one lead-acid battery recycling facility that's still recycling batteries, Cometco, consistently has met this emission rate for the past 6 years. The rule also includes clarifying the applicability of the rule to apply to the battery recycling facilities during closures. There's 3 main requirements during the facility closure, that they would maintain the ambient lead and arsenic monitoring and adhere to the ambient lead and arsenic standards. Also, that they would have to submit and implement a closure compliance plan. Within that closure compliance plan, they would have measures to ensure that they would continually meet the ambient lead and arsenic ambient standards. Also, contingency measures in the event that they exceed the standards, that they quickly can implement to continually meet those standards. They would also be required to periodically update their closure compliance plan consistent with all the DTSC closure phases. The facility would then become exempt from Rule 1420.1 1 month after they complete the closure, and then after they've demonstrated that they have not had any exceedances for 12 consecutive months for lead and arsenic. So the one key issue that was brought up in a letter submitted by Exide is the closure provisions they feel should be are preempted by state law. Staff responded in the staff report, and basically that we retain our authority to regulate stationary sources. We've consulted throughout the whole rulemaking process with DTSC, and they've worked cooperative. We've worked cooperative with them, and to ensure there's no legal or logistical conflicts. Staff is recommending that we adopt the attached resolution and certify the final environmental assessment and amend Rule 1420.1. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your.
You got testimony on this, I think, yeah.
41?
Yep.
We have testimony?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have Luis Caballos. Luis, come on down. And we have Rebecca Velasquez. Would you come to the other microphone? Oh, we have your name for the record, sir.
Good morning. Still morning, right? My name is Luis Ceballos, and I'm a member of the Clean Air Coalition from North Whittier and Avocado Heights. And the reason that I get involved with this group of good people is because, what I hear about this chemical, all the information regarding all these contaminants they release into the air, which is very alarming, regarding especially lead and arsenic. Those are the very, very important, things that made me, come and express my comments to you guys. And thanks for letting me the opportunity to talk to you. And one of the points is support, what you guys, the amendment here. And I wish it can be a little lower. The reason why is it's very alarming, the time, these type of companies, that are placed around the neighborhoods, especially close to schools and a lot of young children, because a back experience that we have, the lead's a super big problem. And you guys need to take care of it. Besides, if we don't have these big contaminants places here around our neighborhoods, I shouldn't be here, and maybe you guys shouldn't be here either, but we'll have to watch and monitor over this. And that's what I said that brought me here and express my concerns. And the reason is, we know in fact that the soil, the lead's got deposited in the soil, along, from the other contaminants like chemicals. And those go into the atmosphere through the air. And they probably be deposited on the roof of the homes close to the neighborhoods, and also everywhere.
Right.
So if I need to ask you, just to, keep focused on this, and also to express my concerns and my worries. Looks like these people, ask you for an extension to expand production If I'm wrong or right, I don't know. But this is a very alarming situation. So that means the lead levels, arsenic, the other contaminants will increase. This is my worry. So I'm not worried about me. I'm getting too old naturally, but I'm worried about our children, of the future of these communities, which we are surrounded by a few cities: Puente, North Whittier, Avocado Heights, Hacienda Heights. So I'm so worried about the future of our young community. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for your testimony. It's excellent. Marilyn Kamara? Your name for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Overmeyer Velasquez, and I'm with the Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier and Avocado Heights. We met back in March in Long Beach, and we're back because we are concerned about Quemetco. Your new rule amendment sounds like a good idea until you think about the history of lead deposition in this community since 1959. That has never been dealt with. Never been dealt with. There was a blood lead level study of children done in 1994 among the children living around Quemetco and Hacienda Heights. At that time, in that study, almost 50% of the children studied had blood lead levels over 5 micrograms per deciliter, which they thought was okay at the time because the standards were low. We now know, and this is abundantly clear in your document today, that no level of lead is safe for children. That has never been dealt with. That study was never followed up on. There was no remediation of those homes, no testing in schools. Public health has fallen down on the job on this, and we are mobilizing as a community to remedy that. And among the things we're doing is coming here to protest this new rule because it doesn't go nearly far enough. It's obvious that Quemetco can do a much better job. They've documented they can do a better job to limit their emissions of lead into the environment, but you're letting them emit more, which is interesting because they have an application on file to expand their throughput by 25%. That's something else we're opposing. You cannot continue to pollute our communities and poison our children and our families. So I'm here to make very clear that we oppose this rule because it's way too lenient. You need to be much stricter in the emissions that are allowed by a major polluter. This is the polluter. This is the #1 emitter of lead compounds in the South Coast Basin. You know this. 74% of lead emissions. This is the 2013 TRI analysis. It's huge, and they are going to continue to pollute, and we can't let that happen. Thank you for your time.
Do you have any comments on that, Dr. Wallerstein?
You know, as has been presented to the board on past occasions, this is a major lead emitting facility within our air basin. But what I would say about the rule that's before you, this is the rule that the board directed us to come back with in this month when the board last tightened the rule, and this rule is by far the strictest rule anywhere in the country.
Would Duncan Mackey come to the vacant microphone? The name for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Marilyn Kamimura from the Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier Avocado Heights. We live within the 1.5 mile perimeter of Quemetco and as close as 400 feet. Thank you for your efforts to try and lower the lead level of the Quemetco stacks. But according to page 48, it looks like this particular rule, which I thought was in support, but support with concern now, that at 0.003, more lead is being actually put into the air. If you look at the chart, that Quemetco can do better. Now, by South Coast Air Quality Management District, considering a permit for 25% increased throughput for Quemetco is making a bad situation worse. First of all, there is no safe level of lead. There's none. Secondly, historical lead, arsenic and cadmium, and other toxins has accumulated and disposed around the facility. Third, no adequate investigation and cleanup has ever been documented by the DTSC. Fourth, documented out-of-the-country hazardous waste batteries are being recycled at Quemeco. Fifth, Quemeco is the highest lead emitter in the South Coast Basin in 2013, 74%, and they are even higher than Chevron Petroleum. How can that be? How can, with all the work with the stacks, and still result in a facility that is the highest emitter of lead in the South Coast Basin? Because of ambient air. All of it has accumulated and disposed on the ground since 1958, and it's being kicked up for decades. AQMD, by not taking a stand, has become another agency that is allowing us to be slowly poisoned. No more lead. We had sent a packet to Barry Wallenstein, asked that agencies work together on this one, and we have never gotten a written response. We had a town hall meeting with the water, air, and soil. DTSC, the Quality Water Control Board, and AQMD. We asked them to work together. There should be no permit increase or throughput on Quemeco. Thank you.
Sure.
Your name for the record, sir.
My name's Duncan McKee. I'm a resident of Avocado Heights, and I was able to work on the working group on this rule since 2010, or I guess we may have started before then. I think we passed it in 2010. Come a long way. I'm here to support the rule with some concerns. One of my concerns is if you see here that Quemeco, or we have documented here, apparently in your staff report, much lower levels than the 26.3 pounds per year. So I'm here to request that we further direct staff to work on bringing this level down even further than what this rule is stating. I think that you could probably disregard the 1.4 pounds. I think that might be the year that the WESP and all that blew up and caught on fire, and Quemeco was down for a substantial period of time. Some of the other concerns are that we're not taking into account the gaseous forms of arsenic. We're concerned they may not be being captured in the ambient air monitors, and so that is a concern. We're concerned about the accuracy of the source testing. We're concerned about, in your staff report, you stated that, staff stated that the wastewater treatment facility, the fumes that are potentially coming off that are being regulated. I think it was a rule 1176, yet public records request documents show that there has been no enforcement on that your enforcement division hasn't even looked into whether there's anything in those fumes that are visible emissions. We're going to oppose the expansion. We're opposing it now. We're going to continue to do that. As Marilyn stated, it's been documented. I mean, I came across some documents showing just unbelievably high levels of lead in the soil, so we're concerned about that. We're concerned about the lack of cleanup in the community, and so we just hope that we can keep moving forward in a positive direction, keep the momentum going that we have going here today, and we appreciate all the hard work that AQMD, the board, the staff, everybody at this agency, at the district has put into this. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Would Angelina Gonzalez, come to the vacant microphone. Dr. Stewart?
Hi, Jim Stewart, speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club. And this is a great day in the sense that we do need to get these lead standards down. And in one sense, I can say I'm speaking also on behalf of Bill McGavern, who worked for many years as the director of the Sierra Club staff in Sacramento, attempting to get DTST to do this and lower this standard. And so we're great that it finally has come to fruition, even though we've caused so much trouble, of course, with all the people, especially around the Exide plant, and thank God that's closed. And so we will continue to support the staff and the community in working. Obviously, you should approve this rule now and take seriously the comments of the community in looking and directing staff to take a look at what's happening around Quimetco, because we need to save our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would Samuel Sukatan come to the microphone?
I'm going to withdraw my.
Okay. And I called Angela Gonzalez, but she's not here?
She had to leave too.
She left? Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes our testimony on this item. Comments by my colleagues?
Question for staff, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Barry or Elaine, with regard to the comments that there'd be a 25% application for increased throughput or production or recycling, what's the status and what's the process?
The application that Quimetco had filed is under evaluation. We have not made any decision on that application yet. We are also working on the environmental document associated with that permit modification, and those are still in under review, being evaluated for compliance with all the rules and regulations. So we are not at the point to recommend either approval or denial yet.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
I move approval of the staff proposal.
Second.
Any opposition to this item? Supervisor Benoit.
Yes, I'm sorry. I want to just take a moment to mention that I had a chance to tour U.S. Battery on July the 7th. Dr. Fine and another member of the staff, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten who that was. Are they here? They came out, and I had the pleasure of being accompanied by the Mayor Pro Tem of the fine city of Wildemar, the Honorable Ben Benoit. Mayor now, sorry. Oh, geez, I keep getting that wrong.
They give you the key to the city?
My point is that the folks there were very concerned about this rule. Once again, staff did a great job of working to try and understand their concerns, deal with their concerns. The fact that their opposition appears to have been addressed is, once again, thank you for the staff for taking the time to be there with us, and also by the time we arrived, I think they'd come to a resolution that was acceptable. So,
well, but you haven't heard Dr. Parker's amendment.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Clark Amendment Parker.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, you do.
And a second? Okay, is there any opposition to this item? Hearing none, this item is approved.
42, yes.
42 I have. It's continued to October?
We would like a motion by the board to continue to October, and we plan to bring it to the next stationary source
You beat
committee
me to
meeting.
the punch.
So moved.
Any opposition? Hearing none, it is continued. Okay, item 43, we have
White paper.
Dr. Williams.
Dr. Burke, today what we're doing is publicly releasing
Yes.
the first of the white papers in draft final form. That way, the public will have an opportunity to review them over the next month, as well as the board members. And then next month, we plan to have you take comment. Today, we'll answer any questions you have regarding the
Dr.
release.
Williams would like to testify.
You don't want to read it first.
Yeah, right, right.
He doesn't want to read it.
Yeah, right. And since you're on public comment too, you might as well just stay there.
Yeah, we'll see you next month. Don't move.
2 for the price of 1.
Stay right there.
I've gotten my copy, but didn't have a PDF, but I've been told everything is online.
Sure.
So, great. Dr. Tom Williams, Sierra Club Transportation Committee and Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community out in Culver City. We have been reviewing a lot of the goods movements, and really, it's freight, I think, but anyway. Are you aware that there is a California freight management plan being done right now by the Department of Transportation? Yep, hope so, because at least going through this one, it wasn't mentioned. There's also
My wife
several
sits
other
on
things
board.
that
My wife sits on that board, so I hear about it all the time. Other than that.
Yeah. The ports, the critical elements, at least from our 710 studies, has been the ports of LA and Long Beach and how many containers they're going to move. And they have projected for 2040, 40 million. But if you look at the little remark on it, it says loaded. Freight isn't the issue. Trucks are, and heavy goods vehicles on the road is very important. And I do not believe those have been reflected in it, because you got to take the containers back to the port. They're called empties, not loaded. So be very careful in the analysis, which has been done on NOx, PM 1, 2.5, or 10, because it may not be reflected in the numbers that you actually get from the ports of LA and Long Beach. We're looking at, for the year 2040, with 80 million TEUs being moved to and from the ports, like 20,000 truckloads per day of 53-foot containers going north on the 210 or going east on the 60. So we're quite concerned regarding the balancing of numbers from the port through the state's program and to the local areas. So that's all for that.
Supervisor Rutherford has a comment.
You just wondered, is the October hearing where we're going to hear from the public on this the only opportunity for them to speak before final drafts? What's the process from there?
Dr. Fine here. The intent is that over the next month we'll receive any comments we get from the public, and if there are changes in that interim period, we'll make them before these final drafts come before the board, and then we will also can hear testimony at the October board as well as board member input that can be incorporated to what would be the kind of the final that would get published. So
And
there's still
Supervisor,
opportunity.
there's been a rather extensive process with working groups and review by the AQMP overall working group on these documents as well. The staff intends these documents really to be kind of a framework by which we're putting together portions of the air quality management plan that'll come to you later this year. And so the real decisions will be in the air quality management plan. So there's still plenty of time for folks to chew on the issues that are identified in these documents. And related to all of that, we're still awaiting some of the information that has to go into the data analysis, for example, from SCAG. So what's presented in here is kind of rough analysis, and the final numbers won't be out until we produce the draft plan.
I can appreciate that, and I know I'm going to do some reading, but when you say there have been working groups, I have heard from countless individuals and industries and organizations that have been disappointed with how the working groups have actually been conducted. that they're getting notices the afternoon before the meeting. They're expected to show up to an 8 or 9 a.m. meeting when they got this document at 4:30 the afternoon before. And so while you say there have been working groups, to the extent those have been effective and actually reflective of public input, I'm a bit skeptical, but I am pleased that we now have a month for everybody to go through this and then perhaps get some real serious input at the October meeting.
Yeah, I've heard some of those same complaints.
You caused the conversation there. You know,
Pretty sure that's my job.
okay. You have no comment on that? It's,
I just asked Dr. Fine to look back through the records and see what noticing was done in what period, and we'll be happy to present that when we come back to the board.
okay.
And you need to put them on a more obvious place on the website, too.
Is there an obvious place on the website?
The only way I can find them is if I type in white paper into the search engine.
Right.
I don't know how to find them any other way.
Try and find the video cast of this meeting on the website, you know. But we're working on that. We're seriously, he's done a good job in bringing together new people. Okay, do we need a motion on this item? No. Okay, then, since you're there, Dr. Williams, we're going to go to public comment, and you're number one on public comment.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, Sierra Club, Citizens Coalition, a few others. Basics. Comments from today's meeting. You have a difficult task. You have a leadership role. You have to balance concerns. However, I remind you that you're also in one of the largest port areas, oil and gas areas in the United States. So yeah, we've had successes. I remember once trying to see the USC campus from LA County Natural History Museum when I was a scientist there. We couldn't see it across Exposition Boulevard. So yeah, things have improved, but we're still not in attainment of federal and state requirements. So yes, we have to balance concerns of all parties, but also the fact that we're a non-attainment district. So when we come to balance concerns, make sure that public health and air quality should be achieving the full attainment rather than partial or number of days. I remember the number of days in the 60s and 70s, and it wasn't very nice. So that's pretty much it. Have a good long weekend. Thank you.
Dr. Stewart, is Dr. Stewart still here? I don't see him. He left, okay. Samuel Sukan?
He left too.
He left too? That concludes public comment? Yep. Would our esteemed legal counsel send us to closed session?
It is necessary for the board to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A and 546.9D4 to consider initiation of litigation, one case. It is also necessary for the board to recess to close session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A and 54956.9D1 to confer with its counsel regarding pending litigation which has been initiated formally into which the SCAQMD is a party. The actions are SCAQMD versus EPA, U.S. Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit case number 13-73936, Morongo redesignation. SCAQMD versus U.S. EPA, U.S. Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit, case number 15-71600, Pachanga redesignation. Okay. A report of the reportable actions taken in closed session will be filed with the clerk of the board. The meeting is adjourned.